My childhood best friends are treating me entirely different after my business took off and has become successful. Because right now I feel like everybody's turned against me and I seriously just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, to start things out, lately I've been going through some purges in my life. My two childhood best friends started changing the way they treat me when their business started taking off. And oh, not just them, even their families who used to be so nice to me when I was nothing started being different. All three of us were so close as kids. We shared dreams and ambitions because we all came from poor families. With me being the poorest because we live in the slums. There are days actually that their goals, plans, and dreams are bigger than mine, and I just say wow and I cheer them on. When it comes to me, I'm just gonna try my best to get out of this poverty because I just know that I have that strong will. Well, fast forward to adulthood, and in our early 20s, one of us started a small business. Let's call him Adam for the sake of the story, and he did this because he did not finish college. And me and the other one, let's call him Billy, went into corporate. I was so happy for Adam. I even started promoting his business, trying to find ways in which he can increase more sales. I mean, I loved helping him out. His business went booming for a year or two, but after that, it's not doing good anymore. And even to this day, it's still trying to survive. But during those times when Adam's business started to become weak, I was not there. I disappeared. Both Adam and Billy did not check on me. I was actually diagnosed with bipolar disorder. But when I am okay, I will just come back like nothing happened, even if I was a danger for myself. But they did not care to ask me what had happened. And you know what? It's okay. I know they both have things going on too, and I do not want to be a burden to them. As time goes by, I learned how to get out of the matrix and also got married to a very amazing and supportive man. I was eventually able to start my own business because of his motivation, and we are doing amazing. Well, Adam and Billy started seeing this progress and they started changing. When we would go to hang out, we would all chip in, but now they're expecting me to pay the whole bill. I then started hearing joking side comments from Adam. He will say stuff like, "Oh, that's fine, it won't hurt you because you're rich now." And I really just didn't mind because he's just like that sometimes. Then there came a time in which Adam started borrowing money from me, but unfortunately he never paid back, but tries to live a rich and famous lifestyle even if his business isn't doing well. I tried several times being understanding and giving him some kind of grace, but I really got pissed off, and now I've just cut him off. But then here comes Billy, and this is the most hurtful one because I never thought he would be like Adam. Little by little, I started feeling like a bank for him and his family who were so nice to me when we were kids. They always ask and borrow money from me, but the difference is that yes, they pay me on time, but they only remember me when they need more money. And they were seriously not like that before. I used to give their family presents and gifts for holidays and birthdays because I am really thankful for them being nice to me when I was absolutely nothing. But last week, I was not able to send some greetings and a gift to Billy's mom. This is because I'm actually 7 months pregnant now, and I got so caught up preparing for my baby. We're also building a house, so lots of things are going on right now. And this is the first year that I failed. And since I was busy, I also didn't lend Billy any money for his mom's birthday celebration. But I really think his mom took this negatively. I posted my baby's first ultrasound on Facebook, and before she used to send a heart for my post, but yesterday she did not. And I tried reaching out to try and talk to her, but she just doesn't answer anymore. So seriously, money indeed changes people. And most of the time, people simply do not want you to succeed. Wow, this is a really tragic story because yes, the original poster is 100% correct. There are people out there that literally don't want you to do better than them, and they will actively fight against you in any way they possibly can to bring you back down to their level. So if you're doing well in something, just keep it to yourself. Don't tell anybody your business and just be successful in private because this kind of behavior is completely toxic and the original poster definitely did not deserve to get treated this way. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my family that if they don't like the way something is, then they need to take care of it themselves, as I literally have no time to do the chores they're complaining about, as I'm currently in the middle of trying to get my master's degree to better my family. But right now, I feel like I laid it on too thick, and I'm honestly starting to doubt myself. Here's what's going on. Okay, so I'm married and I have 3 kids, and they're all teenagers. My husband and I both work, and my kids are in school and do sports or clubs after school. I recently hit a ceiling in my field, and in order to continue to grow professionally, I had to get a graduate degree, so I started my master's. In the past, I usually did most of the chores. My husband does the typical man chores. My kids have some of their own chores like doing their own laundry, taking turns sweeping and vacuuming, cleaning their own bathroom, etc. But I did the majority of the rest and all of the cooking. So I'm a year into my degree, and at the start I was keeping up with the chores I did before, but it quickly wasn't possible. I then asked for help and I was told, well, everything's fine, you're just being too picky. But over time, my family seems to be getting fed up. They've been complaining about things a lot lately, from eating frozen meals to the floors having stains on them, all the way to the stairs having dust bunnies and pet fur on them. If they bring it up, I tell them they are capable of handling it, but they just walk away and it just doesn't get done. I'm doing what I can, but between work, school, and everything else at home, it can't all be done. We aren't living in squalor, but I just can't get the finer details like I could before. Well, yesterday my husband came to me while I was doing my homework and said that the shower curtain liner in our bathroom was moldy, and my God, this pushed me over the edge. I then had my family come into the living room, and I told them that if they don't like how something is, they have able bodies and they can deal with it themselves, that they have the skills to clean. I've just been taking care of so much that they don't see, stating that right now I need them to step up, that if they don't like something, then they need to step up and take care of it, and how I also plan to redistribute the chores accordingly. Now, my kids were arguing that they shouldn't have to do more. They're in school and they're busy afterwards, but I told them that I don't care, I'm busy too, and I can't do it all, and in nicer terms, I basically said they either need to step up or shut up. Well, that night my husband told me I was too harsh and that I need to lighten up. He says I was rude and basically telling them their feelings don't matter and that I need to lay off of them. But I told him the message wasn't only for the kids, it was for him too. He needs to step up as well. But afterwards, I started to doubt myself and I felt too harsh. And as a result, no one's really talking to me now. So I'm now worried that I laid it on just a little bit too thick. I mean, I did change up the status quo in my own household for my own personal reasons. So am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now I don't know what to do. Oh my gosh, this is so stupid. No, you're not the jerk at all. Your family's being very spoiled. You clearly took care of them in ways that they obviously didn't know about, and now that those things are like starting to pop up, they're trying to be like, oh my gosh, this is so moldy. The curtain's moldy, mom, what do we do? It's like, oh, I don't know, get some spray and clean it yourself? Like, they do realize you're getting this degree to better the family, right? Why would they not be on board and be like, okay, let me help out mom and be more responsible? Especially your husband, like what's his excuse? He could easily step up and be like, okay, it's time to take care of my wife and help out. But instead he's pouting like a child, acting like the original poster is being unreasonable. So no, you're not the jerk. This is honestly something that they can easily figure out, and the fact that they're still not willing to like step up, in my opinion, is unbelievably toxic. Am I the jerk for taking back my tip after the waitress humiliated me in front of everybody, all because I left a 10% tip, saying this wasn't good enough and that I need to give more money since servers struggle just to pay their rent? Because right now I'm still very upset and I'm not sure if I made a mistake. Here's how it went down. Okay, so this occurred a few nights ago and I just can't believe it actually happened the way that it did. My partner and I dined out at this Italian restaurant that we've been to several times now. It's not highly sophisticated, but pleasant enough that you get to sit down, order wine, and have a relaxing evening. Now, our server, let's name her Samantha, was kind of in a daze throughout the entire night. She lost my drink twice, served the wrong starter, and vanished for what seemed like an eternity when it arrived the time to order some dessert. It wasn't the end of the world. I mean, I've worked customer service myself, and I get that hectic nights go wild. However, the service was really poor. When the check came in, I paid and left a 10% cash tip. It's not excessive, but it's also not nothing either, and I really thought it was reasonable given the circumstances. We were just standing up to leave when Samantha came over, took the cash and said, "Seriously? This is it?" And she had said it audibly, with a few people at some nearby tables turning around and staring at us. And when she did this, I was taken aback. I didn't even know what to say. She then added by saying, "You know, servers can't pay their rent because of people like you. If you can't tip properly, then don't dine out." Well, the restaurant became totally silent, like sitcom silence, and my girlfriend was wincing. But I just remained calm and I said to her, "Okay, sorry you feel that way." And I started to leave the building. Then, no kidding, she said to me, "Whatever, cheapskates." But she said this loud enough that it was not only us that could hear it. So I turned around, I went back over, I walked over to the table and I took the tip and I left without saying another word. Now, my girlfriend later informed me that I did fine with this, but one of my friends feels like I had overstepped by insisting on getting the tip back. That no matter what, you just leave it and you move on. But I feel like to be humiliated and scolded, all because I left a 10% tip that I actually was going to leave for them, was completely out of bounds. So I really need to know, am I the jerk for retrieving the tip after she yelled at us in front of everybody in the restaurant? Because right now I'm still incredibly pissed off and I don't know if I made a mistake. Okay, dude, if someone ever did that to me and humiliated me like that, I would not only take the tip back, but I would also go straight to the manager. Like, this is just completely toxic. Who in their right mind would act like this? Like, seriously, this is a good way of just completely losing your job and any credibility as a server. So no, you're not the jerk. This is some stupid behavior, and this server absolutely deserved to get the tip taken away, especially after the way she humiliated you in front of everybody. My girlfriend's entitled friend wants me to pay for his dinner, all because of a minor disagreement that was incredibly small in nature, proving to me once and for all that this guy was super entitled. Here's what happened. Last Saturday night, my girlfriend and I went to have dinner, and we actually ran into one of her friends from high school and his girlfriend. From what I've gathered, they used to be close but drifted apart after graduation. Since my girlfriend and her friend hadn't seen each other in a long time, I suggested we all get get a table together, and he and his girlfriend agreed to that. Well, whenever we get to a nice place or eat something new, my girlfriend likes to take photos. It's not like she has a full photo shoot. She takes what, maybe 10 seconds? It's not a big deal, and it's something that she likes, so I don't really care. So when we get our food, my girlfriend took out her phone, and the other girl took out hers as well. The friend then complained and made fun of her girlfriend, and actually tried to get me on his side, but I just simply said that it's not that big of a deal, that I like to see my girlfriend happy, and waiting a few seconds before eating is nothing to complain about. Well, I could tell that he didn't like me much after saying that, but I really don't care. I had a nice dinner with my girlfriend, and she got to catch up with an old friend. Later that night, my girlfriend showed me her phone, and after leaving the restaurant, her friend had an argument with his girlfriend over his comments during dinner, and somehow he was blaming me. He told her that I owed him for the dinner, and my girlfriend just laughed at him, because that truly is a ridiculous thing to say. Yeah, this guy's an idiot, like seriously. He's trying to be like, wow, this is so stupid, isn't this dumb? But like, if my girlfriend enjoyed taking photos of food, then like, why not just let it happen? There's no reason to make fun of that. This makes her happy. Just let her do it. It's what, 10 seconds? It's not that big of a deal. So this guy just made things super awkward for no reason, all because he wanted to be a bully at everybody else's expense. An entitled jerk I've never worked with literally worked against me to try and block me from getting promoted. But after several years, I finally got to return the favor, blocking her from getting a job at my company and effectively blocking her from an enormous payday after we get bought out by a bigger company. Here's how it all went down. Okay, so I was working at a large company with plenty of politics. Promotions within a division were reviewed by a group of middle managers from different departments in that division during a live meeting with the head of division. Now, I was up for promotions, but I didn't get it. A couple of my manager level friends were in the meeting and actually told me why I got blocked. Basically, a manager from another department, who I had never worked with by the way, stood up and argued against my promotion, probably because this person was upset that a promotion she had put up was successfully argued against by her own department head. She had made up some completely untrue statement about my performance in order to get her way. Well, 4 years later, I'm a department head at a small company when we open a position as a head of function that my promotion blocker was part of. And sure enough, she applies and is scheduled for an interview when I get contacted by human resources because they notice we worked at the same company at the same time. Now, I remembered her blocking my promotion, so I told human resources that she wasn't good, she wouldn't be a good fit, and hiring her would be a mistake and all this other garbage. And so I effectively got her interview canceled, and they just told her that we decided to elevate to an internal candidate instead. 3 years later, and this company would end up getting taken out by a larger company for a massive stock price increase over the price that we were at when the position opened. And because we had lots of stock options, I effectively cost her an enormous payout, which is so satisfying because that's what she gets for being a jerk in a very connected industry, especially towards someone who literally had nothing to do with her. Yeah, you literally never know who you could be working for, so you probably in life, and especially in like the corporate world, you really should be nice to people and just try to play fair. Because yeah, sure, sometimes it works out where you can step on the little guy and get ahead, but I would argue that most times it doesn't work out that way. So in my opinion, the fact that the original poster did this to the person who blocked their promotion, like I think that's fantastic and absolutely deserved, because that lady literally got in your way for no good reason. And the fact that karma came back to bite her in the butt is absolutely fantastic. Am I the jerk for telling my friend that I don't want to end up like her after she told me to lower my standards after I denied one of her friends on a date? Because now we are not talking to each other and I feel like our relationship has completely imploded. And at this point, I'm honestly not sure what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, so I met my friend who we will call Rachel 3 years ago in university and we became friends. For context, I'm 22 years old and I have never dated before and I'm completely fine with that. I don't purposefully seek out relationships and I'm comfortable being by myself. I have a few close friends and this is enough for me. In contrast, Rachel has had a lot of boyfriends and in her own words basically says she doesn't like to be single. She met her husband, who we will call Max, 2 years ago in one of our university classes and they quickly began dating. He isn't the most pleasant guy to be around in my opinion and they had quite a few big arguments during the relationship. He even tried to flirt with me and I told Rachel about it, but she just dismissed it, saying he was probably just trying to butter me up so I can help him with homework. He's also told some awful jokes in the past as well. Whenever they fought, I always told Rachel she deserves better and to please just break up with him. But in the end, they always made up. He then proposed to her after 1 year and they got married 4 months ago. However, after they moved in together in the flat that Rachel's parents pay the rent for, Max became even worse. He never helps out with cleaning or cooking, doesn't really take Rachel out on dates anymore, and whenever she tries to talk to him about it, Max tells her to stop complaining about wife duties. So a few days ago, Rachel asked me if I would like to go on a date with one of her friends from high school who is also single and is looking for a relationship. I've never been on a date before, so I agreed out of curiosity. Well, we went to a nice restaurant and the guy never asked me a single question about myself back. And after I got tired of coming up with questions about him, we just sat the rest of the meal in awkward silence. We then split the bill, and after he walked me to the subway station, he tried to kiss me, but I declined as politely as I could, and I just went home. The next day, I met up with Rachel, and apparently she's already heard about how the date went from her friend. She asked me why I rejected him, and I told her the reasons I mentioned before, and that I really just didn't like the guy. Then she rolled her eyes and said that I need to lower my standards because honestly, I'm not that attractive. She then said that I blew maybe my only chance to date, and if I continue like that, I'll end up forever alone, which is despite the fact that she knows I'm fine not being in a relationship. Also, I'm not insecure about my appearance, but hearing my friends say that about me really hurt. I then got angry and I said, well, it's better to be forever alone than end up like you, with a husband that doesn't even respect me. Well, when I said that, she started crying and said to me, "You're being rude. I'm just looking out for you." And then she went ahead and left. And ever since this happened, we haven't texted each other or spoken ever since then. So I'm honestly not sure if I want to salvage this friendship after finding out this is how Rachel felt about me all this time. However, I feel guilty for saying this to her, especially when I knew it was a sore spot, and also for kind of blaming her for the fact that her husband is awful. So am I the jerk here? Because right now I'm honestly not sure what to do. Dude, your friend is so stupid. Rachel actually is an idiot for saying half the things she said. First of all, the fact that she's trying to be like, oh yeah, you need to get going or else you're never gonna find anybody. You're not very attractive, so like the clock's ticking, hurry up. Which is so ironic coming from the lady in an awful relationship. She is literally with a guy who doesn't respect her and treats her like crap. And she has the audacity to say the original poster's ugly? Like, dude, what are you doing? That is not a good friend in the slightest. Like, that's a terrible person that you definitely don't have to put up with. So honestly, the fact that you shot back at her when she called you ugly, like, that is completely justified in my opinion. If she can't handle the heat, then guess what? Don't get in the way of the crossfire. Like, she's the one that opened herself up to get hit, not you. So the fact that she's trying to be like, I can't believe you said that, that's awful. It's like, yeah, okay, well, you just called me ugly and said I'm gonna die alone. Like, that's not very nice either, lady. So no, you're not the jerk here, and honestly, I would definitely find a better friend, because this one sounds like a mess and you can absolutely do better than this. An entitled old jerk barges into our restaurant and steals the one private table we had set aside for a couple who was looking forward to it all night, effectively ruining their night and my night as well. Here's what happened. For starters, I work at a restaurant that is closer to a local small bistro of some kind, which is not super upscale but usually fully booked out, because we are in an awesome location and we don't have many tables. We recently had a woman email us saying that she wants to bring her boyfriend here to celebrate a very special event, and it's not too unusual to receive more detailed table requests for special occasions every now and then. It can range from booking a whole seating area for privacy all the way to asking to put up some decor and then some. But this lady really didn't ask for much. She just wanted to know if she could pay up front to have a more secluded, decorated table. Now, we love these kinds of reservations, especially when people ask nicely and are realistic about it. We closed off a little corner of the restaurant and put up some string lights, some candles, and some flowers. She also came in earlier that night to put up something of her own. And again, I don't want to say what it was for, but it was clearly a very personal item. Well, the night of, the couple arrives, gives me their last name, and I, of course, know immediately who they are, and I happily lead them to their very special table. But when I get there, I find an old lady and a little kid sitting there with their belongings all over the place. It turns out they thought the please wait to be seated sign and the closed for private event sign and the reserve sign somehow didn't apply to them. They just barged right past everything when no one was looking, and sure enough simply claimed the only free table that they could see. Now, some people just have zero awareness, so part of me had to assume that maybe they were just a little slow. I tried to confront them very nicely, even though I was panicking with the couple right behind me. But boy oh boy, that older lady knew exactly what she was doing, and immediately blew up about how no one was tending to their table, and that we were making them wait. I then explained that this table was reserved and that they needed to leave, and that the whole place was fully booked out. She then loudly explained to me that she did not care, that the other restaurant on our block was also full, and that her and her grandson have every right to be here. It took a lot of arguing between me, them, and my coworkers, but when we said we would call the police to have them removed, she finally gave up. But unfortunately, most of the damage was already done. It left everyone in a pretty sour mood, and to make matters even worse, the idiotic kid had tampered with the sweet woman's personal item that she had put up there right before. Now, this thing wasn't valuable. It was just a cute little surprise she was hoping to show to the couple. Well, the couple looked pretty upset, and while they didn't blame us for anything, I could just tell how close to tears the woman was. The surprise she had planned was a pretty big deal, and I seriously felt so awful for her. I've always heard stories about having to deal with crazy people in the service industry, but this seriously was a first for me. I'm just a student doing this some nights nights a week for some extra cash. But my absolute deepest condolences goes to anyone dealing with this kind of crap for a living, because honestly, this sounds like way too much to put up with. Oh my gosh, talk about entitled. You mean to tell me that these people ran through like what, 3 different signs and said, oh yeah, we're gonna sit right here. This reserve seat, yeah, it's actually reserved for us. We're gonna claim it and take it over. Like, I don't blame the kid for showing up and sitting at the table, but I absolutely blame this old lady for stepping up and being like, oh yeah, we're gonna sit there. Because you know for a fact she knows better than this. She knows better than to walk in and just barge right in and do whatever she wants. Any reasonable person would be at the hostess stand waiting for like any seat to open up or something like that. This is not the first restaurant this lady's walked into, and I'm sure she's done this at other restaurants, where she goes in there and does whatever she wants, and then she thinks she can get away with it just by being nasty and rude to you. And I seriously hate people who act this way. Like, seriously, those people suck and they are absolute scumbags. So yes, this was a crappy situation that absolutely could have been avoided, especially if that old woman took the time to read.
My wife drives to my job to nag me for not doing chores. I stay silent and let security throw her out. So my wife, who's 26, and I, 33, have been married for 2 years. I admit that she's a hothead and can be a bit much, especially when she's mad at me. I take responsibility for any mistake I make, like not cleaning the bathroom after the shower or filling her car with gas after using it. I even stand there and let her unload her anger and frustration on me, but only at home and not in public. She tends to start arguing with me in public instead of waiting until we get home. Recently, she's been coming to my workplace to berate me over something I did the night before, like not getting the stuff I said I would, or doing the stuff I said I would do. It's embarrassing and humiliating, and has been affecting my job to the point where I start getting warning after warning from my superiors who, I believe, have been very patient and understanding, especially when my wife makes a fuss at the office. I've told her that showing up at my workplace was not okay and a complete crossing of boundaries 1,000,000 times over, but she refused to take responsibility and said that I'm the one creating these situations and I can't blame or dictate how she reacts. It's tiring having to go through the same thing over and over again. I get that she's frustrated and I have my moments too, but I'd never show up to her workplace and cause a scene, no matter what the justification was. Last week, I was in the middle of a 2-hour meeting, and the next thing I knew, I was seeing my wife barge in while yelling at me, asking why I was keeping the phone turned off. I had to turn it off after getting the warnings about it, since she forbade me from turning it off. I was stunned because my superior and co-workers and potential clients were there. I didn't even move. My superior dealt with it and called security to get her out. My wife started arguing with him, telling him she came for me, and then started urging me to get out of my seat and tell them back off. But I didn't. I just watched as security escorted her out. It was horrible because I had a fear that my job was lost. She yelled at me repeatedly to get them to stop, but she got kicked out eventually. I got told she's no longer allowed there and that this was going to be my final, last warning. I apologized and then went home. She was there waiting and then yelled about me watching and doing nothing while she was getting mistreated and kicked out. I finally snapped and said she was over the line. She made a scene that risked my job over a few missed calls. She started crying and saying I still should have defended her after getting humiliated in front of my coworkers, but I told her she didn't have to worry about it because she's no longer allowed in the building. She got more furious and went to her mum's to stay there. So, am I delusional? I'm not the jerk here, right? That's a definitive not the jerk label for you, Mr. Author. Well, this was a throwaway account with no additional stories to tell, but I really hope for both their sakes that this particular marriage came to an end, especially for his sake. I won't lie, the title really had me thinking that maybe he would share a good portion, if not most of the jerkiness in this one, but it turns out that was absolutely not the case. This isn't a case of a downtrodden wife finally deciding to get her neglective husband somewhere where it would publicly force him to acknowledge her. This is just a hostile and nasty relationship that seems to only be based on conflict. I kinda get the feeling that you guys must spend way too much of your time arguing for you to have such a pre-existing history of public incidents, and things that she regularly goes off at you for that you just have to stand and take at home. And look, this is a one-sided account here, as usual, but even if the guy is just routinely dropping the ball and never cleaning up and spending all their money on hooch, it kinda seems like if she's that unhappy in a relationship, she should have left a long time ago. Maybe this is a flawed retelling and there are more frequent moments of joy in between the flare-ups, but it sure as all heck looks like a really contentious marriage. Best of luck to you both. Please get help or a divorce. Am I the jerk for excluding my husband from my brother's funeral after he called me with the news and told me to guess? I lost my brother in a motorcycle accident 3 weeks ago, at the age of 21. This was sudden and devastating beyond measure. I live 3 towns away from my entire family and I didn't know about it right away. My husband was calling when I walked into the room where my phone was on vibrate and charging. I answered and he asked why I didn't answer my sister's calls. I asked why and whether she called him. He said yes and then proceeded to tell me he received news of a family member's death from her. I was shaking at this point while I was waiting for him to tell me more, but he said, "Guess who?" I angrily told him to stop and tell me, but he still thought it was fine to ask me to guess. That's when I lost it on him because my nerves were done. I yelled at him and then hung up and immediately called my sister, and she told me it was our youngest brother. I felt absolutely devastated before I even knew about my brother's death, because like I said, I started wondering whether it was my mum, aunt, any of my brothers, or even my nieces. It was awful and I felt so much anger, I lost it on him. So yes, I had an awful reaction because this was my baby brother that I adored so much, and my husband knew how much I cared about him. I drove to my hometown 6 hours away by myself, and my husband was mad after he found out that I didn't wait for him to take him with me. I told him I didn't want him there after how he treated me and played with my emotions like that. He said he was trying to prevent me from being traumatized and didn't want to dish the news all of a sudden. He wanted to come, but I said I'd have kicked him out if he showed up, which got him angry, yelling that I had no right to rob him of saying goodbye to his favorite brother-in-law. He said my anger was misplaced and I was taking it out on him for no reason other than being the bearer of bad news, and that nobody wanted to be that person, but he tried to be as nice as he could about it. I haven't talked to him at all, despite him calling me to come home so that we can talk. It's been weeks since I've seen him, but I'm still upset despite him saying he was putting my mental and emotional health first by not dishing the news all at once. But I still don't see how this was justified. Am I being too harsh on him? What the actual fricking frick? Can anyone in the comments explain to me how turning the death of a relative into a fricking trivia game would have helped out in any way whatsoever? You know what I need to have after the dreadful bombshell that someone in my immediate family has died? I need to fumble around in a blind panic while unwittingly thinking about the many memories of them all at once, like the world's most dreadful lottery. I mean, the prize for that particular game show is damn overrated if you ask me. Oh, it's my brother. I win some more defined grief and a bittersweet perspective on all the family photos. Yay, me. You weren't too harsh, and when someone dies like this, regardless of the reason the family doesn't want you there, you darn well respect their wishes. What is it with this guy and just thinking that whatever the frick he was going through in his head at the time would matter more than the blinding grief this guy's family-in-law were going through? I guess the vast majority of our jerk stories here come from idiots who are unable to even contemplate someone else's feelings and kick off situations like this just because they think the others should be accommodating them more. So yeah, textbook example here. Get some empathy, my dude. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for disinviting my siblings from my wedding? So there's me and my elder siblings, my sister and my brother, involved here. We were raised together, and until 2019, we believed that we were a nuclear biological family. Then we found out our dad wasn't our bio dad, which even he didn't know. He'd wanted to find a family member and did a DNA thing to help him find them, and learned I wasn't biologically his. It spiraled from there. It then turns out my older siblings shared a bio dad, but I had a different one. She was married to Dad and had an affair with 2 different men who were brothers. Dad left our mum, hurt and betrayed and overall disgusted that she had lied to him for 2 decades. I was equally mad that she had lied and hurt my dad. My siblings were less willing to cut her off, but their relationship was strained majorly. Dad moved in with me and my then boyfriend, later fiancé, and then COVID hit. At this point, all three of us agreed he was dad no matter what, and there was nothing that could change that. I meant it, and apparently they didn't. They found their biological father, and mine by extension, and have decided that he is now real dad and that our dad is just a stepdad. My brother has even corrected his two little girls who called dad grandpa into saying that he's step-grandpa, and that's what they call him now, while bio-dad gets called grandpa now. I've heard of the whole step-grandparent thing before, but normally not the person who raised your parent their whole life and was there through everything, and who gets cast aside once the bios enter the picture. Look, it's my siblings' choice and all, but they're being huge buttholes. And my dad was really helpful to my brother and sister-in-law when the kids were born. Pretty sure he helped them buy everything for their eldest. It broke my dad's heart, and he decided it was too much for him to accept. And this is after talks between them where he was essentially told to know his place, stay in his lane, and demoted with the clear message being nothing would change. I'm so angry at them. They've tried to push me to meet my real dad and have told me it's okay to go back on what we said. Initially, they were invited to my wedding, but with this whole mess, I told them they were no longer welcome, and I didn't want them to show up. They told me that just because they have a relationship with their real dad, it doesn't change things between us. I told them it does. That if dad isn't our real dad after everything he's done for us, then we're not real siblings, because technically we're half-siblings and cousins, and that my dad is still 100% my dad and biology is meaningless to me. With all that out, it was best for them not to come because I no longer want them there. And what I said hurt them. My sister-in-law, the one married to my brother, told me that I was being a huge butthole for throwing the half-sibling thing in their faces and for cutting them from my wedding. Like we haven't been siblings our whole lives. I think that's almost more annoying to me because that's what happened to our dad. But he can be crapped on and discarded like he's nothing apparently, and he's been the best dad to all three of us, and they just discarded him because he's not biologically theirs. It's not like he lied to us about it. He never knew either. So, am I the jerk? No. Your wedding, your choice. It sounds like your dad is the only person in the whole darn family worth keeping around if you ask me. They can call their various parental figures whatever they like, but what really gets me is making these promises about the emotional value of the man who raised them being their dad sacrosanct, and then not only casting it aside, but trying to get the author to do the same thing, and then being surprised when there was blowback. I can't imagine how much this must have hurt for your father. Also, the irony of the sister-in-law calling you a jerk for emphasizing the half-sibling thing, when all of this kicked off because of your siblings' sheer insensitivity about the blood ties to your father, it's just mind-blowing. I hope that you, your fiancé, and your pa have a great time at the wedding and don't even think about the others, because they don't deserve to take up any portion of your day. I'm glad your father at least has you in his life, because to be honest, you seem like the only one out of the rest of the family tree worth having around after everything he's done for your siblings and their kids. Won't give me the new customer discount? Okay. A few years ago, my wife and I purchased our first home in upstate New York. We weren't moving far, just 2 towns over, about a 20-minute drive. Around this same time, our local internet provider was running a promotion for new customers, offering 5 times the internet speed for roughly half of what we were currently paying. A couple of weeks before our move, I called the internet company to let them know that we were moving and to transfer our service. I asked if it would be possible to receive the new customer discount with the move, and was told in no uncertain terms that this wasn't possible. I insisted that I wanted the new customer rate and even threatened to cancel, but they called my bluff knowing that they were a monopoly and that I had no other legitimate option. Thinking quickly, I asked if it would be possible to get the new customer rate by simply removing my name from the account and adding my wife's name instead. The representative balked at the suggestion and even quoted from a paragraph from my customer agreement outlining how such a transfer from one family member to another is not allowed. Then it occurred to me. I asked the rep if he knew my wife's name or the address to which we were moving. After a brief pause, he answered, no? I then happily let him know that I'd like to cancel my service, effective at the end of the month. He was adamant that any attempt to circumvent their transfer policy was a violation of my contract, but eventually agreed to the cancellation. 2 weeks later, after our move and half an hour phone call, my wife signed up for our new, cheap, fast internet. They jacked up our rates a couple of years later, but it felt good to just get this one over on the big bully. Yeah, that seems like a valid victory for me. Sounds like they're prioritizing customers they don't have yet over their loyal existing ones. Maybe that's the kind of thing you do when you have a monopoly on internet, but don't they expect people to want to get in on the deal? I'll be honest, I know that a lot of companies like this will actually bend if a customer leaves instead of standing firm, so their hold on this area or your neighborhood must have been pretty darn secure. And it's a real win for you that you had more than one person in your household so you could pull this. Well done, the narrator is happy that you got one over on the big evil company. A tiny win that they probably forgot about and then didn't notice, but honestly, that's all any of us can do sometimes. Am I the jerk for telling a family to fly private? I was recently flying from New York City to LAX for a work trip, and I had the displeasure of sitting next to a family and a little boy who was 9. I got on the plane in the midst of issues with my diabetes and I needed to eat within 2 hours, so I began snacking. I immediately began receiving dirty looks from the parents, and the mother said, "Can you not do that? Our son." So I put my food away and figured I'd wait until the flight attendant came around so I could buy food from her and eat at an acceptable time just to show some respect for their wishes. So the flight attendant comes by with her beverages and snacks. I start to ask for a Coke and a snack box, but before I can finish the sentence, the father says, "Nothing for this row, we're all set here." And she continues on. I go up to press the call light so I can get my food and drink because I actually need it, and the father says, "Our son has Prader-Willi, and would prefer it if you didn't eat because it causes tantrums when he doesn't know he can't eat and he's always hungry." I'm close to a tantrum myself at this point, so I look him in the eye and say, "I do not care. Fly private if you want to control your surroundings." The flight attendant comes back and I get my food and my drink. I snarf it down and chug my soda and I sit back. As soon as I'm calmed and I'm able to open my laptop and get back to work, the mother leans in and says, "I feel a calling to educate you about my son's disease." And I felt my entire body clench up. She keeps talking to me and explaining how I'd made her son feel, and I said, "Listen, lady, I don't fricking care. I'm going to handle my T1D the way I see fit, and you're going to handle your son the way you see fit. I'm not endangering myself because you don't want to deal with a tantrum. If you want to control other people, you book all the seats in the row or you fricking fly private." I recounted the story to a friend of mine once I'd gotten off the plane, and she immediately told me that I was a huge jerk and that I should have given them a little bit of grace due to their son's condition. I kinda feel bad, but at the same time, I think that that's unavoidable if you're going into public and you're around others. Am I the jerk? Nope, not even a little bit. Look, I get that it's tough, but you don't get to control other people this way just because of your son's condition. This family probably prepared themselves for the flight and pre-ate or something to get ready for the fact that they wouldn't be able to on the flight. The author didn't have the luxury of knowing about their son's condition and had no such forewarning. I know that we should be accommodating for people's conditions, but you can only go so far. Do you go and sweep all the food off the tables when you walk past a restaurant to avoid incidents with your son? I'm sorry you have to put up with that sort of thing occasionally, but there's only so far that you can expect other people to go to have to accommodate you. And this kid's condition doesn't cancel out our author's diabetes. I don't think anyone wants them fainting and causing a medical emergency on the plane, do they? I imagine that would cause a whole lot more disruption to the family plans than one tantrum. And that kind of logic doesn't just apply to people with diabetes or other conditions. If I'm at the tail end of a series of international flights and I'm exhausted and hungry, do I have to give up my meal as well? You can ask people around you to give up their meals. There's no harm in that after all, even though it's a little nervy. But you can't control how they react to that and what they do. I'm sorry that it's rough, and I do feel for you, but it just kind of seems like you have to settle in for a tough journey in cases like this. So apparently I messed up by misusing a whiteboard for 1.5 years. I bought a whiteboard when I moved into my new and current house. This was supposed to be the ultimate pièce de résistance to my awesome new home office. It took a few months to ship, and when it finally did, I was pretty unhappy with it. First of all, there was this big crack behind it, bending the metal in an unsatisfying way. But it wasn't that noticeable, so I didn't bother sending it back. The worst, though, was that it was darn near impossible to write on it without leaving ghost marks. And you can forget about leaving some writing on it for more than 24 hours. As a result, I wound up not using it for most of last year. Basically, its only purpose was as a magnet holder when it should have been used for so many different projects. Today, as I finally had some free time, I looked into the process of cleaning my whiteboard and making it more usable. As I applied some store-bought cleaner, I found this small tear in some kind of plastic coating. I freaked out, ripped it all out, and came to the horrifying conclusion that I spent 1.5 years writing on plastic. I now have a brand new, unused board that has been sitting in my office. In short, I brought a whiteboard, forgot to take the plastic layer off, and took way too long to figure it out. That's exactly the kind of crap I would have done as well. Far too many relatable stories in today's grouping. This video has opened up old wounds, and for that, you are a jerk, author. But not for the problem you've just described. For that, you're just a bit of a lovable dummy. Also, I hope that you haven't been complaining that your touchscreen is garbage for the last year, despite not having taken the plastic off that either. Just needed to check. Oh, and also the screen on your microwave pad, if you were wondering what that awful smell was. Okay, go forth, listeners, and de-plastic your houses. See you next time. Mini Karen pretends to have a daughter so she can buy cigarettes without an ID. And it backfires. So I thought I'd post this here as it's been on my mind for a while and I still laugh at it after this long. I work in a medium-sized town in the UK, close to the town centre as a systems administrator. I have a few stories that could fill a video by themselves, but I'll save them for another time. Every day I go and buy my lunch from the local convenience store 5 days a week. This day is not unlike the others. The clock rolls around to about 1:30 p.m. and I make my way out of the building to the store to grab a bite to eat. I normally load up my travel bag with food, my usual meal deal contents, and go back to my desk and eat it in quiet. Surfing on my phone, catching up with personal emails, among other things. So I walk into the store and the usual crud is there. Old people, young people, the one odd person who likes to dress in women's dresses. Really nice person, by the way. Then I spot the girl posing as the entitled parent and another quiet kid as they're browsing the shelves. I overhear a couple of sentences from the entitled parent, and she sounds like your typical chav. Yeah, I'm in the UK. Think Bianca from EastEnders. She's shorter than me, long brown hair, wearing sports clothing and large hooped gold earrings. Oh yeah, she's that kind of chav. Ignoring the expletives and general foul-mouthed words emanating from this delightful human female, I grab my usual meal deal and start to browse the confectionery. M&M's or a chocolate bar today? Decisions. And then, suddenly, "What do you mean I have to show ID? I ain't got no effing ID." Followed by a few seconds of silence, and then, "Look, this is my daughter. I'm older than her." Pointing at the girl she came in with, who's dressed in her school uniform. More silence from this girl ensues. The staff member at the till says, "Sorry miss, I'm going to need to see some ID. You need to be at least 18 to buy cigs." The UK law changed a few years ago, and it's now 18. It used to be 16. Now looking at the kid, she was about 14 to 15, kitted out in her green blazer and tartan skirt. The supposed mother could not have been any older than 22 or 23, but I suspect she was a lot younger, given the attitude and demeanor. 17, most likely. Yeah, she might have been old enough to buy the cigs, but no ID, no cigs. Simple. Look, all I want is to buy a packet of UK cigarettes have another name to the uninitiated, but we can't say it on YouTube because it's also a slur for gay people. The store clerk replies, "And for that, I'm gonna have to see some ID, miss." "And I told you, I effing got no effing ID. This is my daughter. She's younger than me. Don't I look like I'm her mother?" "Well, I won't comment on that, but I still need some ID." The quiet kid is looking very uncomfortable at this point. I walk up to the till area and watch from here with my own eyes. She's creating quite a scene, and a lot of people in the store have started to stop what they're doing and see how this plays out. "I want to see a manager." She's being really loud and screaming every word at this point. The clerk sighs. "Okay, I'll call over a manager then." And by the way, trying to buy booze or tobacco isn't illegal if you're underage, I believe, but selling to those underage is. My money is on the quiet kid being her sister and more embarrassed than anything else. The staff member rings the bell twice and a manager arrives. He takes one look at the girl and says, "No ID, no sale." and promptly walks off. He must have heard her all the way over the other side of the store. I bet everyone in the store could with how loud she was being. The manager was done with her crap before even showing up. Then the entitled parent throws a major tantrum. She starts flailing her hands all over the place in the air. Think the Family Guy flailing inflatable tube man. But I'm her mother. She's my daughter. I must be old enough to buy fat cigs if I've got a daughter. You'll serve me now. I want to buy these. I'm old enough. The staff member stands his ground. He's not budging on this one. We all knew she wasn't her mother at this point. Sister or cousin maybe, but not her mother. I've just picked her up from school for lunch and I have to take her back soon. You're wasting my time. I've not had a cigarette in hours and I'm craving a smoke. And you're causing me to lose my mental health. I think she meant mental health. The staff member looks back at her with no emotion on his face, just a cold, blank stare. He slowly shakes his head from side to side. I'm going to have to ask you to leave now, miss. You're causing a scene. All I wanted was a packet of cigarettes and now you've done this to me. She's my daughter. She walks out of the shop screaming profanities left and right, and the staff member calls over the next customer and I walk up. I greet him. Well, wasn't she a polite little lady? That's her daughter, don't you know? By the way, the uniform the younger lady was wearing belongs to an all-girls school for girls 12 and up. So while it's totally possible, the younger lady looked about 14 or 15, so making the mother about 8 when she was conceived. I mean, possible, but we have a challenge 25 policy in the UK, so the mother would need to provide ID anyway if she looked under 25. In short, supposed mother of a school kid wants to buy some cigs, but gets asked for an ID, proceeds to throw a tantrum in the store and is then asked to leave. She's got a daughter. I mean, if she's really her mother, poor kid is all I'll say. I found this objectively hilarious until I realized that this lady was one 18th birthday party away from becoming a Karen, which is a horrifying thought. I didn't think they matured from human children. I kind of just assumed that there was some sort of spawning pool or chrysalid on a spaceship, jetting these abominable creatures into our society full of cheap white wine and ready to go off at the nearest manager. The reality that we might have at least common ancestry is possibly enough to make a man need a drink. Jokes aside, I'm quite glad that her attempted force of personality failed. Hopefully it will dissuade her young protege from following in her footsteps. Step away from the dark side, quiet kid. There's still hope for you. Lay down your blonde hair dye and big ear hoops and return to the light. And if there was any doubt in the store employee's mind, at least they can rest easy knowing that once this young woman threw her colossal tantrum, she was indeed a juvenile. Mentally, if not physically. Not that Karens are above tantrums, I just know that in this kind of case, they'd resort to attempting to call the police or something for discrimination. Still, I wish there were a better system for enforcing the ciggy age limits all over the place. The amount of kids that you see smoking in the UK is actually kinda horrific. If they look under 25, you check the ID. If it's not here by 5, I'm not paying for it. Years ago, I drove a tow truck and we delivered a lot of cars to dealers. One little dealership was notorious for having jerks working there. It was like all the high school bullies got back together and opened a car lot. I got a call on Friday after lunch from a client asking me to deliver a car to the dealership. And they had to have it before 5 p.m. or they didn't have to pay for it. And by pay for it, I mean the car and the tow bill. This would be no problem. The car was a couple of blocks from me and the dealer was about a mile away. I went and hooked the car and headed to the dealer. It was 3:30 p.m. when I left the office. I got to the dealership and went in to find someone to sign for it. No one would sign. They told me to just park it around the back. Knowing what jerks these guys were, no way was I going to leave it there without being able to prove that they got it before 5. I talked to the new car manager, the used car manager, service manager, and finance manager. No one would sign for it and they were taunting me, almost looking for a fight. Okay. I dropped the car and drove it up to their front doors and got out and locked it, backed up and looked at the crew inside laughing. I backed up another couple of steps and threw the keys onto their roof. They lost their crap. I waved and left. I was back in my office less than 5 minutes later. By this time, it's about 4:45 p.m. I walk in and my boss was on the phone and laughing. He called me right into his office and put the call on speaker. Our client was on the phone, as was the general manager from the dealer. The general manager was a lunatic about his showroom being blocked by the car and by me tossing the keys on the roof. My client and boss knew these guys were absolute jerks and wanted to know what had happened. I told them no one would sign for the car and it had to be there before 5 p.m. GM said, right. I said, so it's before 5 and you're calling to complain that the car is blocking your showroom. The GM said yes. At this point, my boss, the client, Mike, and I were all laughing hysterically. The GM got madder until I could catch my breath and call his crew out for not wanting to sign for it. They were going to say the car got there after 5 so they didn't have to pay if I didn't have proof of delivery. That's kind of hard to do now because the GM was on the phone at 4:45 complaining about the car on his lot. That dealer treated their customers the same way they tried to treat me. Less than 2 years later, the building was a mattress store. A lot of people are asking why I didn't use my phone to take a picture. This was in 1981 or 82, pre-cell phones. In short, had to get a car to a dealer before 5 p.m. or they didn't have to pay. They tried to get it without signing and I threw the keys away, making them admit that they had it and had to pay for it. Too jerky? Terrific maneuver, sir. Hats off to you. I doubt the dealer could get away with that these days, but you never know what people will try. Say what you will about our electronic telephone shackles, but it's damn easy to provide evidence that you were at a certain place at a certain time with the thing you were promised to do. Although it does mean that we miss out on stories like this. And you absolutely weren't the jerk in this story. These exploitative monsters forced your hand and I can't credit you enough for your quick thinking and problem-solving skills. Although you are damn lucky that their boss's rage blinded their reason. Realistically, they could have got a ladder up there, got the keys down, and still kept their money for you not returning the car before 5 p.m. Instead, they had to call you and basically give you verbal confirmation that the car was there at the given time, and then have to do the ladder thing anyway. From reading some of the responses to this particular story, it would seem like the bullies from high school starting a business together was at one point an apt way to describe how most car dealerships are run. If that's true, let me just stamp my seal of approval a few more times and thank you. Please come back and tell us how you crushed more jerks like this anytime. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Someone who wasn't airing up their tires parked in the air up your tires spot at the gas station and was a major jerk when I asked them to move. Here we go. My tires are low on pressure, so I decided to head to the gas station to air them up. As I pulled into the gas station, there was one parking spot specifically for people airing up their tires. It's one parking spot with crosswalk-style paint on both sides, so you have room to air up your tires. As I pull up to the compressor, there is a brand new Range Rover in the parking spot. I know he's not airing up his tires because those tires use nitrogen and even have the little N2 valve cap stems. Anyway, you never know what the story is, so I'm being reasonable about it. I waited a few minutes and the owner never returned to his car, so I went into the store. I politely asked the cashier, "Do you know who's driving the Range Rover out there?" as I pointed out the window. The Range Rover owner heard me and said, "Yeah, what's the problem?" I said, really politely, "Hey, I have to air up my tires. Would you mind moving your car so I can actually use the compressor?" "No rush though, I can wait until you're done." He replies, "Let me finish my purchase." The way he said it was kind of jerky. He has a straight look on his face the entire time. I head outside and wait for him by my truck. He finishes his purchase and heads out front where he runs into two of his friends. They all three start chatting and the guy doesn't seem to care about moving his car with any urgency. After a couple of minutes, I found this to be kind of rude, so I walk somewhat close to them and say, "Hey, sorry, can you move your car real quick?" He doesn't even look at me. He maintains eye contact with his friend and gives me the hand motion of shoo or go away. That annoyed me. I was triggered. I jump in my truck and pull it into the crosswalk painted portion where you air your tires. I turn on the compressor and pull the hose right over the hood of the Range Rover so it can reach my tires. He goes, "Oi, oi, watch it." And I respond, super triggered, "Then move your fricking car." He replies, "I'll move my car when I feel like it," and goes back to chatting with his two friends. He didn't walk over to confront me about it. I see how it could be interpreted that way by the way I described. He more just looked over at me and yelled. It got his attention, but yeah, he turned his head and continued talking to his buddies after the fact. I guess he didn't give an F. As I'm airing up my tires, they wander to the side of the store surveying a lot for sale next to the gas station. As I got in between my truck and his Range Rover to air my passenger side, I deflated his driver tires in parallel. They aren't flat, but low enough where he'll definitely be prompted with low tire pressure messages. I got in my truck and drove off while he was still talking with his buddies. I didn't get to see his reaction, but I'm sure everything will click as he starts the engine and sees the message on his dashboard. So, am I the jerk? Well, sir or madam, you get to take your cowl and cape and step up to become one of the dark defenders of the innocent, a jerk vigilante. Wear it with pride and continue on with your acts of mean, petty vengeance on those who terrorize the regular people of the world. I mean, you absolutely screwed this guy's day and may have committed something that he could legally come after you for, but I'm not sad for him in the slightest. Just be fricking courteous. Actually, this isn't even a courtesy, it's just not behaving like a fricking eggplant. Not all four-wheel drivers who drive in cities are massive idiots, but there is at the very least a slight correlation between the two. For me, Range Rover Man's title of jerkdom was assured when he stopped to have a nice long conversation with his pals. At that point, he may have been punishing our author for having the nerve to call him out for behaving like such a sack of crap. Who knows? All I know is at that point, I was actively gunning for our not-quite-caped crusader to trash that Range Rover. And yes, it's actively delightful to imagine him getting in, making the realization, and then simultaneously realizing that he, hopefully, didn't have our hero's number plate to track him down. And I hope that this is a city so that your chances of running into him again are next to zero. That was easy. I was looking for a Staples Easy button as a gag item to put on top of a large radio tower for a climbing class I was hosting and organizing just before the world went sideways in 2020. Said item basically just shouts, "Easy," when you press it. I see online the local store has 2 versions in stock and at least 15 of each version. One of those is even on sale. I was getting some work done on my truck at the dealer a short walk away, so I head over after dropping it off. The store has maybe 4 or 5 employees in the front chatting. I was one of 2 customers as there was an older lady getting things printed. I spent about 15 minutes looking, but I couldn't find them anywhere. So I go to the desk and ask. The woman there says they should be out somewhere, so I ask where. She just rolls her eyes and says they must be out, but that I could order online. Okay, well it was just for a stupid joke and not worth paying for shipping, but as I go to leave, I check my phone and see that I still have the webpage open. I also see they have an order online and pick up in an hour option. Great! I have nothing better to do as my truck was supposed to be ready in about 2 hours. I found a nice desk chair in the back of the desk display area to sit at, where I could see most of the store from. Then I ordered it for pickup. A moment later, I see an employee leave the front area with a small printout. He proceeds to walk around for a while, passing me a couple of times. He can't find them either. After another 10 minutes, he goes back to the front and gets another person to start looking. More fruitless trekking around the store, and I can see that they're starting to panic. As I'm in a swivel chair, I have a great view of everything and can rotate as needed. Thus far, I seem to be unnoticed. Now, 3 of them are looking. Another few minutes and a manager has appeared to see what's happening. Finally, he gets everyone there to start looking other than another employee who's still helping the old lady. I overhear him commenting on how other things are not in the correct shelves either. After what's been about 1.5 hours since I entered the store, they realize the buttons are still up in a box on a high shelf. The desk woman I originally dealt with is asked to go get a ladder and has to come past me. Now she finally realizes what's happened and makes a very lovely face at me. She finally gets the box down and takes one out to the register while the manager has everyone else gather around to start organizing the store. I still haven't received the "item is ready for pickup" email, but I get the call that my truck was ready. I notice this lady is glaring at me, but must have entered it in as ready as I get the email. Now, as these formerly chatty employees are being put to work, I walk up to the register and get the pickup from her. As soon as I start walking to the door, I hear her manager call for her to come help. Thanks for the tip to order online. I'll admit, the idea of taking out the button and pressing it did occur to me, but also that it would have got me hurt for sure. I'm not an imposing person. In short, I had it implied that I was just kind of dumb by a Staples employee, and then I got to watch said employee who called me that haul her butt up a ladder to get me the item she said would be easy to find. Am I the jerk? Yep, that's kind of the perfect revenge for this, isn't it? Although I think you are overestimating just how far this woman would have gone to recoup some of her lost ego. She might have just called you an eggplant, but she was hardly going to leap across the counter and beat you senseless with the button you were mocking her with. Then again, I wasn't there and you know more than me. Perhaps she just had the eye of the tiger. Then again, assuming that you're in the States, that would also seem like a terrific way to win out with the lawsuit of a lifetime. I feel like you've doubly missed out now. You're not the jerk, you just kind of won here. Although I do find it kind of hard to vilify all the ground-level staff working for this mega corporation. Seems like the woman at the counter was just kind of annoying and dismissive. If this were a game, it would kind of be the first boss jerk in the long lineup of them that one fights throughout their lives. Also, I've remembered that you were apparently a climbing instructor, so you got to watch a bunch of complete amateurs struggle up to what might have been a much easier task for someone like you. This is all particularly satisfying, I admit, despite the fact that your villains are a bunch of low-paid warehouse and salespeople. My final check was late, but I learned I get paid for every day it's late, so I kept quiet. I got a job as an emergency medical technician, or EMT, after a 6-month community college training course. I was woefully unqualified, I barely knew the basics, but the teacher kept saying, "Don't worry, the new job will train you when you're hired." I got hired at an ambulance transport place that just took people to dialysis and things like that, not emergency services. But there was no training. I was told to figure it out myself. I didn't know what I was doing and I quickly realized this wasn't a fit. But I continued to try. On day 4, I was let go. I'd worked 4 days total. I signed a paper with reasons they were firing me, all of which I agreed to, so I signed. I asked if they had my check ready, and the man who was doing the paperwork said they didn't, but they'd send it to me. Not exactly legal, but okay. I waited and waited. No check. I called to see where it was. I knew they were supposed to get that to me pretty quickly by law. I called a few times to see where it was. The boss lady was so rude, hanging up on me, not taking calls. When I did get someone, they'd say, "We'll mail it." I started researching labor laws because it was getting ridiculous. That's when I found out they have to give me a day's pay for every day my check is late, which is $150 a day. So I stopped calling and started waiting. I finally got a check, but it was a payroll check. And it turns out I'd worked 2 days in 1 day period and 2 on the next one. So I called again to tell them and got yelled at by the boss lady. Waited another 2 weeks and got my last check and filed my claim with the labor board for not getting my final paycheck in the time allowed by law. It had been about a month by then. First meeting was a mediation where we tried to settle. The boss lady wasn't having any of it. She kept saying she didn't owe me anything and her offer was $500. She said this was all a setup by me. I knew they owed me closer to $3,000 and they didn't have a leg to stand on, so I refused. She stomped out and said I'd be hearing from her lawyer. Next, we went before a labor judge. This time, the evil boss had done her research. Every excuse an employer can use for not paying me the last check, she used. She said I moved. She said I never tried to call them, that they tried to call me numerous times. She said that they tried to call me to get my address, but my number was changed. She said her husband was a cop, she was an honest person and I was a liar, and did all of this intentionally. She said I purposefully didn't clock in and the times were messed up. She also claimed a ton of reasons why I was fired. She claimed I almost killed one of the patients, none of which were listed on the paper they made me sign, and the judge called her out on that. I went home, printed my phone records and highlighted all the calls and letter from my landlord saying I hadn't moved, and took it back to the labor board and dropped it off. I didn't get to see the judge again, so I don't know if the judge ever saw it, but I did win the case. Plus the judge added 4 days because the last check was sent on a Friday before a 3-day weekend. I was only supposed to be paid until the postmark due, but I got paid until the following Tuesday. Over $3,000. Also, the evil lady wasn't paying the ambulance drivers double time after 12 hours. So I let that slip in while I was in the mediator's office and she said she'd look into it. I hope they did. And that was the end of my EMT career. There are so many things here that are shocking to me, but first of all, to clear the title of this channel, can we all agree that the author here is not the jerk, right? It might be kind of insane to take any sort of EMT job that you aren't qualified for, but honestly, most of the blame for that goes on whatever company this is. that thinks chucking untrained schlubs into life and death situations is even remotely okay. And honestly, that seems like par for the course for this ridiculous organization he found himself working for. Because it sure as crap doesn't seem like any other part of the organization is working either. And the fact that when they eventually have to literally pay up, they can only fabricate a bunch of easily disprovable garbage is not helping their company image. Honestly, if you were verbatim told to figure it out on an EMT job and summarily let go, I don't know if they're just corrupt or completely non-functional and corrupt. Good on you for getting paid every dollar you were owed. 4 days of work for $3,000 takes you from being a poor, underpaid, and underappreciated staff to certifiably winning. And even better on you for tipping people off that the drivers were being underpaid for doing their extremely long shifts. I don't know if that doesn't just mean that the employer would tell drivers to conceal when they worked long hours, but I appreciate the effort. Who knows though, maybe you got some poor souls months and months of back pay. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Today I messed up by opening my boyfriend's roommate's bedroom door. About 4 years ago, I started seeing a guy who worked in the same industrial park that I did. He was 28, I was 21. After a few dates, I visited his apartment in a building nearby to watch some movies. When we arrived, he showed me around. The bathroom, his bedroom, the living room, then there was another door. He told me he recently let a friend stay with him between places, that he's currently in the process of moving out and not to go in there. Okay, cool, got it. Never thought about it again. This isn't my apartment and I don't care what's going on behind there. Things were going pretty well between us. We kept it casual, seeing each other once or twice a week. We kept this casual pattern for a few months, and the relationship grew into a more comfortable partnership. I started staying over more often and began wanting to do my part in keeping a tidy house. He was always adamant that I never lift a finger and did all the dishes himself. He got me every drink and snack and did all of the vacuuming, among other things. One day after work, I wanted to surprise him with a home-cooked 3-course meal. I was off work about an hour before him. He was aware I was going over to his place to wait for him and didn't know about the dinner. I went shopping and lugged all of the groceries up 3 stories. When I arrived, he wasn't home yet, but I had a key, which was given to me a few weeks ago, to let myself in. The fridge was surprisingly bare. There were a few dirty dishes in the sink and a few clean ones on the drying rack. I took it upon myself to wash the dirty dishes and afterwards put the others away. I started opening cupboards, familiarizing myself with the layout. That was my first mistake. If a cupboard wasn't entirely empty, it was filled with garbage. I mean, takeout bags, junk food wrappers, empty containers, and dozens of pizza boxes. Almost hundreds. Out of about 16 cupboards, above and below, 4 held pantry items and kitchen utensils, and the rest were empty or Tetrised with garbage. Needless to say, I was overwhelmed. It didn't smell like rotten food, and there were no signs of something like this. I feel like I was blindsided. It made me question everything he's ever said. I remember the few white lies I caught him in, and the big lie about his father's self-deletion attempt, which was confirmed by his sister to be entirely fabricated. I can detail this at the end of the story. Suddenly, I remembered the roommate story. Since we'd met, I hadn't heard a thing about his former roommate, not a story, not a name, nothing. So obviously, that's my next step. Did I feel bad about it? I was crossing a boundary for sure. But at this point, the entire relationship felt like a million miles away. It felt like it was built on lies. I felt betrayed and a bit stupid. I knew I'd hate myself if I found out later, so I opened the door to the spare room. Yep, mountains of garbage. Mountains. With a path. Each corner was a mound of empty pop cans, bottles, pizza boxes, garbage cans. No furniture, just a million pieces of garbage and the smell of mold. Could barely see the floor. The same kind of garbage that filled the kitchen cupboards, not the garbage of a roommate that left months ago. I felt bad for him. Obviously, he had something going on with his mental health, because that's not something normal people do. I just went about my evening. I waited for him, made dinner, and brought it up gently at the end of the day. I hate confrontation. He was immediately upset and screaming and crying, and attempted to gaslight me into thinking I was in the wrong. He tried to tell me I was the cause of throwing him into a hissy fit and none of this would be happening if I didn't want to be considerate and make him dinner. It's my fault for finding it, not his fault for hiding it from me. It ended with him crying and refusing to talk to me. Easiest breakup ever, to be honest. And yes, there were 2 sets of dumpsters on the property. 2 for garbage and 4 for various recycling. He's a Reddit user, because I introduced him to it. So if you're seeing this, I hope everything's okay. In short, I found my now ex-boyfriend's raccoon-like garbage hoards when trying to cook him a nice dinner. Then he blamed the fight on me for snooping. Okay, so let me get into that fabricated self-deletion story. One day my boyfriend was acting very aggressive and strange, on edge and kind of snippy. I asked what was going on. He said he was dealing with a lot of personal problems. I told him he was free to talk to me about them, but I wouldn't stick around to hang out if he was going to continue taking it out on me. I said I'd give him some space to deal with it. He started scream crying and was in shambles in my arms within a few seconds. He told me his dad texted him a note saying he was about to disappear forever, and he didn't know what to do about it. His dad lived in the city 2 hours away on his own. I said we had to act fast and get him help. Get him on the phone while the other one of us calls the police. He seemed hesitant to every suggestion I had to remedy the situation. Having suffered from mental health myself, I wasn't going to sit back and let his dad do that. Anyway, I started to seem suspicious and I was getting bad tummy troubles. He went to take a shower to calm himself down, and I called his sister. His sister and I had met quite a few times in person, so this wasn't weird. I spoke to her gently about the situation and asked her to reach out to her dad with me. She called him, and I heard back from her in about 20 minutes. She said that it wasn't the case at all. His dad texted him and told him that he would no longer be paying his bills for him, that he could no longer afford it with the payments on his new condo. I didn't realize that the man I was seeing wasn't paying his own bills. This was the weekend before the garbage incident. When I realized what happened, I was fuming. Absolutely livid he could lie to me about something so huge. It was the first straw to break. But I tried to put myself in other people's shoes because I'm an empath. This whole situation was, I believe, a man who was suffering from depression and was really great at masking it. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he lied because he was so embarrassed about the situation he found himself in, having no one to pay his rent and couldn't admit it to me. I truly hope he's thriving somewhere and living his best life. But in that brief, casual relationship, I wasn't going to take on the responsibility of getting him help. I did get him resources for help and did what I could, but I couldn't take the lies anymore. I didn't deserve that. So, yeah. Wow. Okay, so the first thing I have to say is that the author seemed incredibly trusting and like they gave their partner the benefit of the doubt for a long time. Which, to be clear, isn't a fault of theirs. It speaks volumes of you that you were initially prepared to try and calmly talk your partner through this, despite some of the pretty shocking stuff and deception they'd already uncovered at that point in their relationship. They were also correct that this man was clearly mentally ill and needed help, so I won't do too much jerk stone throwing here against him. But yeah, reading the first part of that story, I was completely blindsided by the trash room revelation. However, with the context of the story about his father, it is slightly less surprising that something pretty dark was going on with this guy. With the story of lying about his father, it may be that he was just too embarrassed to admit that his father had been paying his bills all that time. And there's no judgment on her from walking away from the relationship. He was lashing out once he got discovered, and as we've said, he clearly needed some kind of professional help, because he had been unhappy for a while, and his response was clearly to go on the attack instead of letting his partner help out. I hope he's in a better place now. Am I the jerk for using my son's savings to get his stepbrother's car fixed? My stepson, 19, got a new car from his biological mother. She and her family are well off, and unlike me, they could afford to buy a car. I'm happy for my stepson, but my son, at 17, isn't as happy. In fact, he complains about how unfair it is for my husband to let his ex gift their son a car, but not him. It's unreasonable, I know, but teenage years are mostly hard, and it's even harder to expect the kids to be reasonable. My son wanted to take part in driving the car as a compromise, or else we'd have to get rid of it. I sat him down to explain that the car is his stepbrother's property, and he shouldn't be expecting to drive it unless he's given permission. He was having none of it, and kept giving us ultimatums saying he either share the car with his stepbrother or the car goes. When my husband confronted him, my son went and did a ton of damage to the car. He threw paint on it, ruined the lights, and damaged the front of it completely. My stepson had a breakdown when he saw it in the morning, and husband was beyond livid after seeing the footage from our driveway cam and seeing my son damaging the car. My husband confronted my son later, and all my son did was laugh and give him the middle finger. To be frank, if my husband and my stepson choose to go to the police, I wouldn't blame them. My son had no excuse to do this. Seeing my stepson devastated like this breaks my heart and makes me feel like a terrible mother to both kids. I went to take all of his camp savings for this summer to pay for the damages and gave them to my husband. My son found out and went bat crap crazy on everyone in the house. He accused me of stealing, then trying to please my husband for bedroom favors, and then told his stepbrother that he warned him, and so he shouldn't be blamed. He also said it was my fault for not getting him a car, or getting my husband to get him a car in the first place to avoid favoritism and conflict. He's been spending the majority of his time in his room refusing to come out or eat anything. I'm worried about him not eating because he did this once and ended up in the hospital with low blood pressure. Am I the jerk? You're not the jerk, and I'm very concerned about your son. That's an extreme reaction, and the fact that you were clearly setting reasonable boundaries with him and punishing him appropriately would suggest that it's not normal for you to let him walk all over you and get what he wants to put him in this place where he thought this would go well for him. That, coupled with the self-starvation, is pretty concerning. I guess this is 2 stories in a row where we can only say from our limited perspective that it sounds like the person in the story really needs professional help. The fact that he said he was literally left with no other option than to go into vandalism mode, and that he laughed after committing the crime speaks of a mindset that is pretty far removed from what most of us would consider sociable. Therapy might need to be a thing here because this kid does not sound well. Or maybe he's just intensely committed to getting what he wants. And please, ask people who are more qualified than the narrator before you act on stuff like this in your lives. What I can say is that you aren't the jerk, and neither are your husband and his son. Am I the jerk for embarrassing my stepdad in front of his family and saying he's in my house? For the past few months, I, a 17-year-old boy, haven't had a good relationship with my mum or stepdad. I'm angry at them because 2 years ago, when my dad passed away, he left me an inheritance that I'm supposed to get on my 18th birthday. I'm also getting survivor's benefits that my mum uses for me when I need things. So it's not like she used this inheritance for me. They bought a house that we moved into. It was weird for me because we've always lived in a 3-bedroom apartment. My stepdad is a substitute teacher, and my mum's a part-time receptionist. They've never had enough to go for a vacation or something, but suddenly they had enough for a large house out of nowhere. My mum looked guilty about it until she finally admitted they used some of what my dad left me to buy the house. And I lost my crap. They tried to justify that it was for me too, and I asked them, does that mean they're moving out when I'm 18 and the house is going to be in my name? And they're like, no. Yeah, that's what I thought. Supposedly the house was for me, but max time I would have lived there was a few months. There's still some money left if I want to go to a cheap college, but I can't believe they used my money for something on themselves. That amount could have helped me get my own darn house. Also, I think it's funny since my stepdad didn't like my dad, since I was spending more time with him, and that meant my mum had to pay a little in child support. But apparently he doesn't care about using the money my dad left for me. And sorry if this is a bit of a rant, but where I'm asking if I was a jerk was last Saturday, his family all came to stay at the house. They stayed Friday night, so it was next morning when I'm getting ready to go to work. I made myself eggs in a hurry before I left, and my stepdad asked how come there wasn't more for his family. I told him it's because I'm leaving for work and there isn't going to be time to make something for everyone. He acted like it's not a big deal if I'm a little late, since it's rare that they have people over at the house. We argued back and forth because I'm not going to stop to make breakfast when he can do it himself. Then he pulled that "don't talk to me like that in my house" crap. By the way, there's no door in the kitchen and the opening leads right to the living room, so they could all hear this. I said loudly, actually, it's my house, since you paid for it with my money, and don't forget, you stole that money from me. My mum is expecting me to apologize for embarrassing him in front of his whole family, because after I left, they all had crap to say about that. They'd already gone by the time I got home, but you could feel the tension. He straight up ignored me. That's how bad it was. I don't feel like there's anything for me to apologize for, so that's where she thinks I'm not being a good son and kind of a jerk. I want to know if others feel the same. As for the money, I didn't think something could be done about that, now that I'm still not 18 yet, but I'm going to find out. Everything was supposed to go to me after I turned 18. That's what the lawyer explained to me. It was the lawyer that did my dad's will, and my mum was there at the time. To be honest, I didn't pay attention to all the details. Everything was still a big shock to me. My dad didn't have any other family aside from his best friend, who's my godfather. Some people have already told me to try and reach out to him, maybe he can help. So, yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. So, am I the jerk for yelling at my stepdad like that? Yeah, this sucks for you, author. Kinda sounds like your mum and stepdad just used the money and had no intention of you knowing. Just sort of giving you the inheritance and pretending they had no clue why it was so little. Honestly, I would say go for it, go to the estate lawyer, and go after them once you have all the facts. Because at least from the facts we have, it sounds like they screwed you over really bad. Don't kick off any big fights until you have all the information, as it sounds like you're at least stuck in that household for a while. I don't know what other explanation there could be in your fact-finding quest, though. Seems like they've been selfish and crappy as all heck. Customer keeps calling me at 4 a.m. to yell at me about a job that I quit 6 months ago. This happened a while back, but I still get a laugh out of this. This is also a bit of a long story, by the way. At my first job, which was an online directory and blog, we had a client who was entitled to a free, limited-time premium listing. This included a short write-up about her business on our website, which would then be hidden or unpublished after her premium listing had expired. That is, if she decided not to avail herself of the paid premium package. Basically, she was on a free trial. I was on the editorial team and first encountered her when I had to interview her for the write-up. My colleagues had advised me to be careful because she was rather irritable and rude. But I spoke to her in English, which wasn't my primary language, by the way, and she was very nice to me. I wrote the article and everything was just fine, until her free premium listing expired. The account manager assigned to her updated her weekly on the status of her account and reminded her that the premium listing would soon expire, and she yelled at my colleagues on the phone, saying that a business as large and successful as hers, with celebrity clientele, should be automatically made premium whether she paid for it or not. Then she refused to speak to anyone except the general manager or me, an editorial assistant. As our GM was in a meeting outside at the time, the sales manager, account manager, and I took the call over speakerphone in a conference room. As soon as they informed her that I was now in the call, her tone changed and she was suddenly polite. She asked if we could keep the write-up that I worked so hard on published on the site, even if she would no longer be on the premium package. She then went on to say that surely someone with my educational background and who went to the same university as she did would understand. I think this fact had come up while we were making small talk during an event. I told her that it wasn't up to me to make that call as I was an editorial assistant, but that we would be happy to keep the write-up published for 1 more month if she decided to purchase the premium package the next month. Taking my cue from the sales manager, who was writing down some responses to help sell her the package, I then said something like that a successful entrepreneur like herself would understand that we needed to provide these premium services from that point for those with paid subscriptions. Finally, she agreed to pay for the next month to keep her account's premium status. I resigned shortly after that for unrelated reasons. 2 or 3 months later, I received a call from this client. As a side note, we were not issued company phones at my first job, so I'd used my personal number to contact clients for phone interviews, and the company would just reimburse me. So this call came, and I was surprised because I contacted all the clients I'd worked with before I left to inform them about who would be handling their editorial needs upon my departure. She was complaining that her write-up had been taken down and that I had to do something about it. I informed her that I was no longer affiliated with the company, but that I would pass her concern along to my former colleagues. The call ended and I contacted my former colleague to let her know about that client's concern. Guess what? The client hadn't paid for the premium package in the last 2 months. Several more months went by and one Sunday I was awakened at 4 a.m. by my phone ringing. Guess who it is again, and this time she isn't at all polite. She was yelling at me saying that I didn't republish her article and her listing had gone back to basic, which is the free status. She said that the company should be grateful to have her listed because she had celebrity clientele and that she was a celebrity in the industry in her own right. She was infamous, not famous, by the way. I was done with her by now, so I repeated that I didn't work there anymore, and if she wanted a premium account, she should pay for it like everyone else. Then I said if she contacted me again, I would sue her for harassment. And then I hung up. It was an empty threat, but she never contacted me again. Years later, I found out that she had been blacklisted because she never paid for a year's worth of the premium listing. She's a massive weirdo, right? Yeah, this lady is a very weird sort of jerk from the narrator's perspective. The whole different attitude she displays to you and your colleagues is very confusing. Lord knows why she singled you out to be polite to. But as a jobbing freelancer, I can't believe the audacity in repeatedly pressing a claim for payment-free premium services for that long and being repeatedly angry when they can't get it. Look, I get it. Being thrifty is a great asset in running your business, and you are entitled to ask for freebies. I have asked and been rejected, and I certainly don't get angry when people ask me for freebies. I almost always say no and then explain why I can't if they demand it. But you don't get to fly off the handlebars if your request is rejected. What is the author's company going to gain by giving this woman free premium service if not her money? It kind of feels like they've weighed up the positives and negatives and decided that they can live without her profile if she decides to pull her subscription. It is that lady's duty as a business owner at that point to either admit that you need them and pay up or stop using the service. Screaming wildly into the void only wastes your time and energy. Weird, angry, unproductive jerk. My job tried to charge me for my personal calls on my work phone, even though I had an unlimited plan. So I need to preface this by saying this happened a long time ago. Like back when cell phone plans had minutes. I was working as a contractor in a hospital for a medical supply company. I was in a team lead kind of role in a small department, supervising about 20 people total. Part of my job description was to carry around a departmental cell phone at all times, even though I was an hourly employee. Kind of a bogus deal, but whatever. Employees would call me 24/7 for troubleshooting or if they were calling in sick. I never got paid for these phone calls, but to me at the time it wasn't a big deal. This was when I was quite a bit younger and didn't know how to advocate for my own work-life balance yet. I was just too happy to be there, and they knew it. This particular area was also in the mountains, and I didn't always get the greatest reception with my T-Mobile phone. I got great reception with my work phone, so every once in a while I'd use it for personal use. After about a year of this, I got an email from my boss's secretary asking me to pay for each of the calls I'd made. I said, sure, send me the phone records. They wanted to charge me something like 15 cents per call, even though I was told initially it was unlimited. After that, I went through the phone records over the past year and saw I'd used it maybe 10% of the time for personal calls. After adding everything up, I emailed her back. So I added everything up and it turns out I owe you guys this amount of dollars for my personal calls. Technically, I'm an hourly employee, so I should be getting overtime each time I pick up the phone for work purposes. Will we just subtract the difference for all those hours owed? I never heard back. I didn't push it and they didn't either. And thank God for that. So your workplace sounds like they were definitely taking advantage of your good nature and willingness to do gosh darn work-related things in your own personal time. And the fact that they simply didn't answer the overtime question means they knew exactly how much more they should be compensating you. Having the nerve to charge you, $3 that they didn't pay a dime extra for, is possibly the most penny-pinching and stupid thing I've ever heard. Kinda seems like the time your boss and his secretary, plus any accounting peeps, took to work this out would have cost the company far more than they would have made in your measly repayment. I'm glad that they didn't charge you a cent extra, but I'm sort of annoyed that it was brought up in the first place, if I'm going to be honest. They are stepping over dollars to take in dimes. Well done. Make me come in on a Sunday? Fine, but I'm going to play Monopoly. Years ago, I worked in the office of a distribution center for a builder's merchant, full of very petty us versus them types. Every July, there was a summer stock takeover for the weekend, which was compulsory, but overtime was paid. This consisted of last orders being picked up and sent from the warehouse, outstanding errors being cleared off the system in the office on Thursday, count on Friday and Saturday, for which the office staff would join in after a quick refresher on the warehouse management system. Then Sunday would be a catch-up, ordering, picking, and sending day, so branches would be running as usual on Monday morning. Office staff were not trained or employed for picking, and we weren't needed on the floor. For several years, we got away with not having to work on Sunday, but one year, the pettiest of the petty women caught wind of us not working on Sunday and went to management to demand that we work it. If everyone has to work all weekend, then it should be everyone. The DC manager told us that we would have to work it, and we asked what we were supposed to do. Our job was to answer calls from branches, which were closed on a Sunday, and sort out issues from the day's deliveries, which also didn't happen on Sunday. The manager insisted anyway, so we said we'd come in, but we were bringing food and playing Monopoly, since there was no work to do. Fine. Do what you want as long as you're here and in the office. Sunday comes around and we stick to our word and have a lovely day playing Monopoly, eating treats, listening to music, and I think I even bought a portable DVD player and we watched a movie. The on-site HR manager came in at one point and asked what we were doing, so we explained. I could see her mentally calculating how much double time we were getting paid to play board games, and she stalked off to shout at the DC manager whilst we were in the clear. The following year, we didn't have to go in on Sunday, and petty people who moaned were told to mind their own business. It was a weird environment, and still is, according to the people who are still there. And those who moan loudest often get what they want to just shut up. Petty woman, as much as I hate calling women Karens, she did have the haircut, was moaning about the unfairness to all others in her area, so the manager probably gave in to ensure that there wouldn't be a mass illness going around on the most important weekend of the year. Yep, never fear, you aren't any kind of jerk in this situation. That's Petty Lady's title. And look, I get the other employees being kind of bitter about you not having to do the same extra days. It sucks, but come on. Just having you there, bored out of your brains, doesn't sound like it would have made their day go a jot faster. And honestly, as much as they might have been annoyed at you getting a day off when they were pulling extra days, I'm sure that going past the office and seeing everyone playing board games and having a party probably wasn't going to be any fun for them either. But you should probably write a note to Petty Woman thanking her for the double overtime for playing Monopoly for several hours. I'm sure that'll go down well. Although I'm not sure that even being paid to play Monopoly makes that game worthwhile. I hope that you didn't come out of it hating your fellow co-workers who'd taken part, because that's the net result of most games of Monopoly that I've seen in my life. Also, you're darned fortunate that you were paid overtime for this. A lot of salaried jobs will just ask you to do stuff like this from time to time, and if you don't like it, no dice. Luckily, they don't do it often, as otherwise they'd have a revolt on their side. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Won't fix your buggy software that costs us thousands of dollars per year? Fine, pay our bills then. I'm the AV supervisor for a large company that hosts events. Specifically, I look after quotes for the technical side of corporate events, giving clients access to projectors, microphones, speakers, among other things for their large corporate presentations, meetings, and whatnot. I also manage and brief the floor crew who actively run the events. We use a program to book our equipment which, while powerful, is a bit laggy on the average computer and is also extremely expensive per year. About $2,000 per user per year, and there's about 30 of us in the company that use it. Relative to how much our company makes per year, it's a pretty hefty cost. It's a good thing when leveraged properly, but sometimes it can drive you mad with its weird way of doing things. One important feature of the program is that it tracks the booking of all equipment everywhere, including time for packing it into a room and packing it out of the room. This is useful because it prevents our team from overbooking equipment. If it's not available, the system won't let you book it. There's no way around that. If I'm short on equipment, I can book extra equipment from another rental company and on-charge that to the client, when I know in advance that I need to do that. Anyway, cue a big presentation from the booking company showing their latest version of the booking software. It's great, it's faster, it's better than ever. We have a busy week coming up and I'm flat out floored with paperwork and pulling 60 hours a week. Our company is fantastic with overtime. We don't get overtime pay, but we do get time in lieu. Our bosses are totally cool about it. So if I work 1 hour overtime, I get 1 hour off the following week. Do a 60-hour week, and you get 20 hours off later. Anyway, one of my floor crew comes to me. "Hey, John, this equipment isn't available. We've already got it out at another event." "What? That should be available." "No, it's definitely not. I just set it up for another event 2 hours ago, and that event is running for 3 days. Cue me running back to my desk and rechecking all my paperwork. For your information, equipment lists going out to events is often over 100 lines long, hence why we don't do manual checks for overbookings. The system should do it for us. As it turns out, all of our equipment was overbooked multiple times, in many cases overbooked on 3 events or more. I make multiple phone calls to rental companies and bring in rental equipment on short notice. That's expensive, and I can't charge it to the client on such short notice either. If you took our expected profits for that week, you could add a negative symbol onto the front and that'd be our new profit. I log a job with the company that makes our booking software and then proceed to double-check all our upcoming events. Whew boy, a lot of overbooked equipment. As a note, these events are often independently created by multiple people at different times of the year. There's no way they'd themselves check if the equipment was available, it's just not feasible. Hence why we rely on the system that, up until now, worked okay. The booking software company is extremely dismissive, saying that it's a rare glitch and that they'd look into it. Cue 1 month later and still no fix. I'm now spending significantly more time double-checking all of our events for overbooking. The booking software company still doesn't care about a small-ish company like us. Frustrated, I ask my boss for a copy of our service agreement with the company. He's as annoyed with the situation as I am, so we go through it together. Turns out there's a clause in there saying that the booking company would provide compensation in the event of total system failure, in the event that the system can't be accessed. Well, we'd definitely call this a system failure, of sorts. Its failure is costing us a lot of money. So we send the bills for all of our rentals that cover overbookings to the booking software company. That gets their attention quickly when the total bill amounts to more than triple how much they make off us each year. The booking software company writes back, "Hey, what's with these bills? Here's the job reference that you still haven't responded to after 2 months now, and here's the link between each rental and each event that's overbooked." There's no way that the system is letting you overbook equipment, and you can't send us the bills to pay for every event that's overbooked. I share my screen. All right, let's test it. The booking software company shares their screen as well, logging into our version of the booking system. They proceed to book some equipment that should 100% not be available. True to their word, the system doesn't let them do it. I then book the exact same equipment on the exact same event, but from my computer. My boss's witness, the system lets me do it without any alarm. This surprises them and they start talking about potential fixes. They also say they're willing to pay for the rentals on all days up until the date that we reported it. 2 months later, we're still billing them for every piece of rented equipment and they're still paying without questioning, and we still don't have a fix. I've changed the procedures to check for overbooked equipment though, so we aren't running around like madmen trying to fix things at the last second anymore. In short, booking software company releases a software update letting us unintentionally overbook equipment. They ignore our requests for a software patch and we leverage their service agreement for compensation in a system failure. Wow. I do kind of wonder at the size of certain companies like the software dev who are apparently just able to shoulder an unexpected extra few grand of stuff like this a few months in a row without apparently taking the time to fix it. I understand that I'm not a software dev, but from what little I know, this seems like the kind of thing that you can fix relatively quickly if you just put a bunch of your IT people on overtime for a few days. That's going to be way cheaper than the alternative that they don't seem in any hurry to fix, right? This is less, am I the jerk, and more, am I overpaid and complacent? I mean, we can estimate from what the author has told us about the cost of this software that they have, that it would have likely come up to at least 180 grand in costs for the developer, depending on what the following months of rental looked like. So even if they aren't a jerk, someone or multiple people there are grossly incompetent, and this is several people's worth of salaries and unexpected costs that are coming out here. So it's the kind of phenomenon that will result in layoffs in companies of a certain size. Here's hoping that the author is exaggerating the cost or that the guy in charge recoups the cost by just firing whichever manager hasn't fixed it, instead of some poor bottom-level employees. Take the train? Sure thing, boss. This act of malicious compliance took place a few years ago. I was in a role that required constant travel between offices, so I was provided with a car. One day I was told by my manager that I was going to be working in a single location for an extended period and therefore had to give up the car. This wasn't my home office, so I'd be reimbursed for travel costs and, crucially, any time spent traveling over the normal commute going to your home office would be considered time at work. Hey, no problem. I was happy with this, so I asked my boss for a parking spot for my own car, as spaces were limited. But there was no other parking nearby, and most importantly, there were no public transport links between my home and office location, so it would take a long while to get in. Sorry, employee, no can do. Just take the train. We'll give you the tickets. Okie dokie, boss, if you're sure. So making sure I took my book and headphones, I took the train as instructed. 3 separate trains later, and I arrive into the office just before lunch. My boss was horrified, but couldn't say anything when I showed the route I had to take. And their face was a picture when I told them I'd have to leave shortly, as it was the same journey home. I was paid for nearly a full working day on the train reading my book, and my boss couldn't do anything about it. Needless to say, I got the car back the next day and I got a space to go along with it. Haha, excellent. I feel like you could have maybe sent your boss this information beforehand, but I commend you for leaping on the opportunity to just get a nice day of reading in instead. I hope you took a full hour lunch break too, just to rub in how few actual work hours you were getting as a result of this decision. I think you should have indicated to them that this might be a problem, but then again, for all I know, maybe you have one of those travel departments that literally won't listen to employee input right up until someone higher up goes and screams at them. And I feel like you probably achieved that outcome. Isn't it always funny how them saying something is a no-can-do very suddenly becomes a very much can-do in the space of 24 hours? I hope they listened to you more in the future. My tutor became obsessed with me and touched me, so I used a brick to stop her. Alright, buckle down, because if this was a roller coaster, it'd be the Tower of Terror. It's also a very long story. Now, just as a little disclaimer, the person involved may not read Reddit, but her son very well might. So I've changed names, places, and specific details, and I'm not going to describe the person's appearance. I will, however, be telling you of a revenge that started off petty in nature and has since had a pro outcome, and is still ongoing. I'm a university student, at 19 years old, in Canada studying history. Since September, I've been struggling with both my physical and mental health. The problem with a free healthcare system is that sometimes there are long waiting lists for mental health services. And despite being put on medication, my condition was worsening. I'd gone to a member of staff who we shall call Patricia to explain the situation. Initially, she was helpful, giving me extensions on assignments and special considerations for my exams. I passed the first semester with a whopping 62%, which was impressive given the fact that I hadn't really been to any lectures. After the Christmas break, my mental health was so bad that I ended up in hospital. I also struggled to get back into lectures as planned or submit much work. I was seeing the student support team the university had supplied and the mental health team the hospital had provided. I have a personality disorder and sometimes I find it hard to control my emotions, and Patricia was well aware of this. However, she was going above and beyond her normal duties and was starting to get a little distressing. She'd offered to come to my GP appointments with me, constantly email me, 3 to 4 separate email chains a day, and then got my personal phone number off the university system and started texting me. Being naive, I thought that having her phone number would be useful, as I check my texts significantly faster than my emails. What a bad idea. What was confirming attendance for meetings quickly turned into, "Hope to see you soon," and asking how things in my personal life were going. The event that knocked me for 6 was when she turned up at my GP surgery after I'd told her my appointment went badly. Luckily, I was on the other side of town by this point, but she sent me a string of 4 texts stating, "I'm at the GP, where are you?" and ending with, "I'm not going to nag you," before ringing me 3 times despite me hanging up immediately the first time. A side note at this point, she very obviously cares about me, but she's incredibly overbearing. I'd gone in for a routine procedure at the hospital to try and sort my physical health out. A cystoscopy if you fancy a cringe. So she sent me a text asking how it had gone. I'd been put on the same antibiotics as before, and when I tried to explain to the consultant that I was already on them and the pain hadn't stopped in months, I started getting a little angry and upset. Not enough to cause a scene, but enough for them to firmly tell me to leave. I explained this to Patricia, and she replied with, "Stop arguing, winky face." Now, given the nature of the procedure, the position of responsibility Patricia has, and the fact that it's coming from her personal phone number, I found this extremely inappropriate. This kind of behavior went on for a couple of months. I was trying to keep her at arm's length. I still need her in terms of getting assignments in and stuff, but I don't want her reaching into my personal life. But she keeps trying. She's told me repeatedly that I will have a fit-to-work procedure put in place due to the lack of assignments put in, which would decide my future at the university, and that the options would be getting suspended or getting expelled. This added a lot of anxiety to my life and ultimately destroyed my mental health. So after a not-so-helpful session with the mental health team, I submitted the worst essay I've ever written with a sarcastic note at the bottom, and I still got an 18%, which is a success. In hindsight, this was probably the worst way of trying to get back at her, as Patricia called me in for another meeting, but not before ringing my boss and my mental health consultant, asking to attend my therapy sessions, and then telling me I'm making it more than it needs to be. The meeting with Patricia was hell. She started off by stroking my knee, not sensually, but way too close to be comfortable, which put my back up immediately. She tried to get me to cancel the submission, which I wouldn't, and then told me I was going to get her fired or reprimanded if I don't. Hello, emotional blackmail. I repeatedly tried to explain that I was struggling and it's a case of mentally having to fight myself to get out of bed in the mornings, let alone research and write essays, do complex maths, and attend 12 lectures a week. She kept shouting me down with things like, "Just because you have a mental health condition, it doesn't mean you're special." And, "It took me 3 years of intensive therapy to sort my head out, so you should be fine by August." Eventually, I was frustrated, sobbing, and bent over, head on my knees in the chair. This cut off the circulation to my legs after 40 minutes of feeling trapped in her office, so when I finally got the courage to leave, I physically couldn't handle it. I made it halfway across the room before stumbling. I didn't fall, I had a hold of the table. Patricia shot up from her chair like she'd just won the lottery and held me from behind. I got out as quickly as I could. She sent me a text at 10 to 11 in the middle of the night, telling me that it was really valuable. So finally, the revenge. I was so angry I decided I was going to come down on this woman like a ton of bricks. I spent 8 hours collating the year's emails and texts, annotating them all and putting them in a folder alongside evidence I was actively seeking medical help, a condition of the university for students who are ill. I affectionately called the folder the Brick, because if all else fails, I'm going to hit her with it. This folder weighs at least 5 kilos, just to give you an idea of the amount of trees I had to kill for this. I submitted a complaints form for 3 separate issues: emails and texts, blackmail, and physical contact, as well as a designated form for harassment. Now, this would normally go to Patricia, but since I was complaining about her, I took it to the dean. Phase 1 complete. Phase 2 was picking apart her emails and making a case for mistreatment. The fit-to-work panel I attended, after 5 months of being told that it would happen, were going to expel me completely until I whipped out the brick and showed them 8 cases of unprofessionalism in 1 email. My sentence was reduced to only suspension, meaning I still have access to my uni email address and student union services, which was useful for Phase 3. Phase 3 was taking my case to the university legal team and holding this over the dean's head until a satisfactory outcome is achieved, or I'll take it to court. And so, dear listeners, after successfully enacting Phases 1 and 2, I can confirm Patricia has gone on 6 months of, quote, sick leave. Let me tell you exactly why she's not on sick leave and has in fact been suspended. She was supposed to be on my fit-to-work panel. 3 days after going on this sick leave, the whole department has been told not to contact her, and if they have an urgent matter, they must send it to a different person through an online reporting system, which will be more closely monitored. We were also told that she would not be replying to emails because she's, quote, ill, which made me laugh because she had been wanting me to write 5,000-word essays despite the fact that I was genuinely ill. Given the nature of Patricia's role at the university, handling sensitive information, dealing with vulnerable students, this will be a major blemish on her record at least, and could well cost her her job and prevent her from getting a new one in the same field. I've since left the university for my health reasons, which were no doubt made worse by the actions of Patricia. In short, tutor at the university harasses me in more ways than one, causes a severe decline in my mental health, and I complain with 8 months of evidence and get her suspended and nearly fired. Potential legal case is pending. Wow, absolutely harrowing. Look, if there's a 5-kilo brick of paper evidence of inappropriate conduct against you, you're probably the issue and jerk, I'd say. While it's good for course personnel to be aware and sympathetic to their students' ongoing issues, anything beyond acting on referrals and reading what mental health specialists say is probably way more than you should be involved in any one student's personal life. Good program directors will stay abreast of issues like this, offering time off or other options, but remaining in a strictly professional capacity. And that's ignoring the fact that Patricia's conduct goes well beyond tutorly concern and goes straight into indisputable obsession, stalking, and inappropriate physical contact. I can tell you that the narrator legitimately drew his legs up to his chest when he first read the part about her holding you from behind while you were trying to leave. This is just so not okay on any level, and I really don't know whether she's a desperately lonely and inappropriate person or an actual predator. In any case, even if her intentions were purely good, she shouldn't be in a position where she acts on it in ways like this. It's only going to happen to more students, and our brave author has to be commended in pushing through the grueling health struggles they were battling and at least getting her investigated for her conduct. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. You scared me with one of my biggest fears, so I made you go face to face with yours. Okay, so my cousin is a prankster. She likes telling jokes, and one of her favorites is, during the holidays, she likes to tell me my uncle, her dad, is coming to pick me up. If I'm being honest, my uncle is not a nice man. He yells at me and everyone for everything, he lies about people to make them look bad and make him look good, and he makes fun of me for being overweight. He's very verbally overbearing. It's gotten to the point where I've pretty much grey-rocked him, which is basically no contact. And my cousin's favorite prank is telling me that he's coming to pick me up to take me to family gatherings, which I usually avoid going to if he's there. And 2 hours in the car with him? That's literally hell. So a couple of weeks ago, she lied and told me he called and was going to come and pick me up for my birthday. I felt like I was having a panic attack, and I remember crying, hyperventilating, and pacing back and forth trying to figure out some way out of it. And yes, visiting him is just that bad. Then my cousin started laughing. I told her, that's not funny. She knows how I feel about that man, and she said, don't you feel better now that you know he's not actually coming? I haven't forgotten that. It's been 2 weeks, and I've had enough of that prank. I want to prank her to kind of get her back. I remembered her biggest fear. Clowns. She's been scared to death of clowns since she was a kid. So I had a friend that's over 6 foot tall, dress up in a scary-looking clown suit. I told her I got a free dinner for 2 coupon for her birthday at her favorite restaurant and wanted to share it with her to bait her. We left, and I had my clown in place. The plan was to stop in the middle of this old rural road and stop the car at a specific spot, where my friend was hiding. Everything went to plan. My friend parked his old junk car in the ditch on the side of the road. I stopped and said we need to check it out, see if they need help. While she's looking into it and looking around the corner, I sneak back to my car. My clown runs out of an old barn and straight for us. She saw him, froze, and started screaming. She tried to run to my car, but I sped off before she could get in. I didn't abandon her, I just drove over the hill where she couldn't see me from where the old car was and watched in my rearview mirror. She tried running with the clown, chasing and screaming for help. The clown caught up to her, and she got on her knees and started crying. He laughed and revealed it was a joke. I drove back and started laughing with him. She told me that wasn't funny, and I repeated what she told me. The "don't you feel better" line. She screamed and yelled the whole car ride at me that I could have scared me to death, and I told her that's how I feel when she tells me about my uncle. I can basically just hear an internet Chad repeating the phrase, "It's just a prank, bro, it's a prank," over and over again in my head. But the cousin was repeatedly pulling this joke with the uncle despite the fact that it was clearly a source of great distress and trauma. So although pranking her into thinking she was literally going to die is quite extreme, The fact that the author could literally use the same catchphrase as her cousin to justify the situation was hopefully a great way to enforce that this kind of thing was in no way an okay prank to pull continuously. I do worry a little about how rough the cousin's life must have been living with the uncle, unless her parents were separated, and maybe he has something to do with the cruel streak that she's exhibited in her pranks. I can see the author's prank kind of poisoning these two against each other, but I really do hope that the teaching moment was received and processed and they could stay in touch and only use pranks of the non-emotional torturing sort in the future. Revenge on my horrible mother. She never knew it was me responsible for the clink. This happened in 2004 when I was 14. A bit of backstory before I begin. My mother is not a good person. It was just verbal abuse for most of my life until I was 14, and after that it turned physical. Because of this, I came up with creative ways to punish her in my own petty ways, like tampering with her food and dunking her toothbrush in the toilet every day. This story is one of my better petty revenges towards her and the one that annoyed her the most. I talked to my friends about the things she did to me, and although I appreciated the advice to go to the police, I knew that it wouldn't work. My mother is very convincing when she wants to be, and every other time I went to the police, they never believed me. One of my friends, who we'll call Tom, gave me a brilliant idea that would annoy her to no end, but wouldn't get me in trouble. His dad is a mechanic, so Tom knows his way around a car. After school that day, I went with him to his house. He showed me a place underneath the car between the top of the front wheel and the side of the engine and told me what to do. Bring on the pettiness. I had to wait a few days to enact my revenge, but the day finally arrived. My mother and sister left the house to ride their horses, which gave me plenty of time to do what needed to be done. By the way, my sister was her golden child until Mum started treating her the same. But anyway, the next day I went with my mum and sister to do grocery shopping, and I was elated to hear the product of my labor as the car started to drive down the driveway. Clink, clink, clink. Yes, dear readers, I'd attached a rock to the end of the string inside the car that made a loud clink sound every few seconds when the car was moving. Mum said, "What the heck is that?" "Oh, no idea, Mum. Maybe you should get the mechanic to have a look at it." Remember how I said that Tom's dad is a mechanic? Well, he's the only mechanic in the town we lived in, and Tom made sure to tell his dad about the things my mother did. Needless to say, he was on my side. So after we'd done our shopping, we stopped at the mechanic so they could look at it and fix whatever needed fixing. Mum said as we arrived at the mechanic, "Hi there, well, my car is making a weird noise when I'm driving. Can you look at it for me?" Sure thing. How about you take a seat inside and I'll give it a drive and see what the problem is." He got in the car and drove it around the block. When he returned, the noise had miraculously stopped. He charged my mum for a check and we were on our way, but not before Tom's dad subtly handed me the rock back and gave me a wink and a smile as I left. That night, I put the rock back in place and left it to do its thing for the next day, and oh boy was that satisfying. The next day, the noise was back, so Mum went back to the mechanic, but this time the mechanic couldn't find anything wrong with it and, quote, couldn't hear any noise. I never even bothered taking the rock out after that, and neither did the mechanic. He had experienced her entitlement firsthand and had heard many stories from other people around town about her. The rock wasn't damaging the car or affecting its performance, so there was nothing that needed fixing. I moved away to live with my dad when I was 16, but before I moved, the clink was still there, tormenting my mother every time she drove the car. I lost count of the number of times she took it back to the mechanic and the amount of money she spent on getting rid of the clink. The last time I saw my mother, I was 23 and she still had the same car. I expected the rock to have fallen out by then, but the car still had the clink, just not as loud. Thanks, Tom. So we're going on a decade of persistent clinking to drive this awful woman insane? Honestly, that seems like a mild form of revenge for what she was putting you through. Also, I understand that the rock is pretty impressive for lasting that long, but I think the far more impressive aspect of this is the string. Did you tie that stone up with an adamantine thread or what? Here's hoping it continues haunting her till the car's dying day. Although it sounds like you've long since got away from that awful woman, so we can only hope for that fate. Also, the narrator thought that her small aside point about the mother and sister bonding over horses sounded familiar. So he checks, and this is the same author from our video titled, "My mum cancelled my birthday and gave my sister 2 birthday parties instead, just to punish me." Which kinda blows my mind. The mum probably deserved this treatment based on what we've heard about her in that first story alone, and I wonder how many stories of her behavior and her daughter's revenge we'll have in the future. I'd say we've already beaten the odds by making me voice 2 videos featuring Momzilla inside 2 weeks. I mean, out of all the text available on the World Wide Web. Keep your ears open for more, I guess. Karen gets mad and accuses my baby of being gay. So I've heard a lot of stories in here, and I've never really experienced anything close to what I'd hear about on this channel, but then I had a kid and have apparently become a Karen magnet. This story is me and a wild Karen in a baby lounge and feeding area. So I was changing my darling son, who's 5 months old, and he had a huge poop explosion all the way up his back. So I grabbed what I had in my diaper bag, and it was a pink bodysuit with only pink socks left. We thought we were having a girl first and got surprised by a boy, so I saved most of our daughter's stuff, but some items like socks and a few natural pink onesies I use for him. He was in his pink bodysuit and socks. He was feeding and having a great time when a woman approaches me. She had been feeding across from me. Such a cute baby. What's the name? It's Jonathan. The Karen gives her shocked Pikachu face. You really shouldn't put pink on a boy. Why? He doesn't mind at this age. I know things are more alternative here in this country, but stuff like that will turn your kid gay. I don't care if he's gay. Karen got a black onesie out from her bag. Here, you can put this on him. Didn't you hear me? I don't care. At this point, my boy was upset, so I packed our stuff and left. Karen got the last word as we left. F off then, you and your homo son. I was just gobsmacked. What in the world goes through a person's head to think that that's okay? So this was my day, and I just needed to vent. Oh, and by the way, her baby was dressed in black and white stripes, so obviously a straight baby. Wow, do we even have to debate who's the jerk in this story? Anyone unsure about the result here? Okay, I'll spell it out. Karen is not the good guy. My goodness, lady, stop watching Fox News, stop believing that there's a gay agenda grooming our kids into being gay, and change the outfit of your prison stripe baby. That raises concerning questions if you think that color schemes and patterns dictate your offspring's path in life. Seriously, these people. Note that she was also 100% friendly and thought the baby was cute until she learned that it wasn't complying to the gender color guidelines she had decided on. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to find my favorite salmon shirt, entitled Mother Pushes Me Away in My Wheelchair to Take My Spot. A few years ago, I was living in Las Vegas, and an entitled mother literally wheeled me away from my family. I have a number of health issues, and after a few botched surgeries and neurological damage, I was bedridden. I never left my house or bed except for doctor's appointments. I hadn't been out at all for 2.5 years. I'd worked really hard on my daily physical therapy, and my balance had greatly improved. My family came out for a visit, my husband was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base, and I was so excited to surprise them with my improvements. I could stand and walk and was actually wearing pants. To celebrate, I wanted to go and see the fountains at the Bellagio. For most people, this is a nice outing, but for me, this was years in the making. I was nervous that I might get overtired and lost in the fast-moving crowds, so we had to bring my wheelchair. We knew the schedule of the fountains and arrived super early to secure a spot in front where I could see from my chair. It was such an important moment for all of us. We lined up by the fence, and no sooner did the show start than I felt this jerking on my wheelchair. I thought maybe someone had tripped on me, and I immediately looked up to apologize. I was pretty self-conscious, and ashamed of being out in a wheelchair in such a big crowd. When I glanced up to apologize, I saw this woman with a small child on her hip, using one hand to literally pull me away from the fence. Because she was only using one hand, she spun me completely around to face the street. Yeah. In hindsight, I think I should have fought and shouted, but in the moment, I was just trying to not get squished by all the people bustling by who couldn't see me. I had one poor guy basically land in my lap. I was a little preoccupied, and I didn't think about screaming at that moment. I was stunned. I could hear everyone reacting to the fountain show, and here I was looking dumb, awkwardly facing a bunch of strangers. I yelled for my husband, but he couldn't hear me over the noise. I looked behind me, and this woman had plopped her child up onto the guardrail where I'd been sitting. Never made eye contact with me, never said one word to me, and had treated me like a piece of luggage. I tried to stand up, but the people around me had crowded me so much that I didn't have room to push my chair back enough. I desperately looked around at the strangers in front of me, hoping someone who had seen what happened would help. It then dawned on me that this was a huge family and friend group. They all began nudging me aside further and further away from my family. It all happened so fast. I found myself pushed into the walking area, where people who weren't stopping to watch the fountain show were basically trying to get around me. People couldn't see me through the crowd and were stumbling over and past me. I couldn't see anyone from my family anymore and was trying hard to push myself up out of my chair the way my physical therapist had taught me. I felt someone grabbing my chair again and I panicked. I started yelling, "No, please no!" And then I realized it was my husband. He had glanced to check on me and to take a picture of me being out for the first time, and I was gone. He had to fight his way through the crowd, the same family group, to find me. I burst into tears. I don't know why, but it was like all the trauma from the last few years hit me all at once. I told him they'd pushed me away. After putting it together, my husband was angry. He turned to this group of people and demanded to know who had pushed me away. By this time, the fountain show was pretty much over. The group initially just ignored my husband like they had me, until I pointed out the woman with her child as the culprits. My family confronted her, nicely I might add, and tried to explain why a wheelchair is an extension of a person, etc., the whole spiel. She at first pretended like she didn't speak English, but I'd heard them talking amongst themselves in English while they pushed me into the walking area, and I told my husband as much. She then gave up on that act and told my family about how I was in their way and I probably couldn't see anyway. And the man with her claimed in a raised voice that, in their country, they don't take their shameful family members out in public. To which my husband responded, "If that were true, none of you would be here." I was maybe even more shocked by being called shameful than by being wheeled away. I managed the courage to tell him that what he said was bullcrap and that, "I'm sure people in your country are actually very kind and would be proud if I was their daughter." I remember the exact words I said because later I was quite proud that I'd stood up to them. The crowd sort of collectively scoffed, spoke to one another quickly in what I think was Hindi, and slowly walked away as if nothing had happened. We didn't stay for the next show because I just wanted to go home. One of the sadder revelations was finding out why my husband was able to just barely rein in his rage. He said that what held him back from losing his crap was that he didn't want to get thrown out of the military, because then I'd have lost my health insurance. I don't know which is worse, pushing a disabled person in a wheelchair out of your way, or wrongfully painting your countrymen as prejudiced. Oosh, yeah, I feel like we definitely shouldn't just pin all of this on cultural differences. In our time on the channel, we've definitely encountered Karens from all classes and nationalities who would definitely pull crap like this given half a chance. It may be true that there's more of a tendency to conceal family members with disabilities in India on some accounts though, but I can't imagine that all people there are just that cruel about dealing with them in public. But oh my god, I can't imagine how rough it was to have this be your first major reintroduction to the outside world and the public in general. As a nominally functional person, if I have a rough encounter with a bunch of idiots like this, it's enough to make me want to hide away for a good long while and take solace in some computer games instead. So I hope this doesn't ruin the outside world for you. I'd say that being able to argue back and call them out on their crappy behavior was very impressive for someone who'd been pulled out of public life for a while. And it was awkward and unexpected enough that no one could fault you on your initial inaction. There are some moments when people pull crap like this where you need a solid 30 seconds to come to terms with just how awful and selfish people are being, because you can't quite believe this is happening to you. I'd say that was likely part of what was happening with your reaction. I hope you're doing better these days. Also, kudos to your husband, although the explanation as to why he cut back his response is heartbreaking. During the pandemic, I messed up by accidentally stealing a neighbor's mangoes, and they've been trying to catch me for a month. I've been in lockdown in Shanghai, China for 2 months. During the first month, residents were basically under house arrest, unable to leave the house to buy groceries, so my neighbors organized group buy, where the entire building ordered food together. One day, I, as usual, sneaked out of the building to hang out with friends in a different district. Came back at around 11:30 p.m. and saw a basket on the front desk with a couple of mangoes in there. I thought those were up for grabs because they were in an open styrofoam box, looking half empty. So I took some and went back to my room. The third day, a friend living in my building came to visit and said the group buy chat group was trying to catch a mango thief. I freaked out and went back to check the group chat. Someone said she brought a box of mangoes, couldn't find them, asked if someone mistakenly took those, and 5 minutes later, another guy, let's call him Detective, said, "Let me go check the security camera." And the guy went to check hours of footage from 2 security cameras in the lobby and then uploaded screenshots and videos of me taking those mangoes in the group chat. My God. The good thing was, because I was sneaking out of the building, I tried to stay low by wearing a beanie, a gigantic mask, and an oversized jacket. The hallway was very dark anyways, and even my mum wouldn't be able to tell that was me. The bad thing was, it made me look just like a thief. Also, that was already day 3 and I'd eaten the mangoes already. So the detective guy went back to check 5 hours of footage of the camera at the main entrance, from 6:30 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. Again, because I snuck in, I wasn't shown on that footage. Then the detective guy and his neighbors, who were obviously bored to death, started speculating. They first thought I was male because of the jacket and the beanie, and then female based on my shoulder and head ratio and the cut of my pants apparently, and that I lived between floors 1 and 3 on the west side. I don't, by the way. And that I must have went back to the garage to grab something from my car before coming back to the building, since I was carrying a bag. I don't own a car and I needed a bag to carry my PS4 controller and some games to the friend's house. That I must be an experienced thief because I went straight to the pile of mangoes and started putting them in my bag. For frick's sake, I didn't know these were very private property. Anyways, in the past month I tried to buy some mangoes to give back to the neighbor, but my order kept getting cancelled, so I haven't succeeded. I went back to check the price of the entire box and it was around $10. Last night, it's been a month since the mango snafu, I got invited to one of the neighbors' houses for dinner. We drank and talked about random things until the detective guy showed up. He quickly started reviewing the mango case all over again, including the fact that he recently went back to the crime scene to reproduce my route. So there I was, the mango thief, sitting next to the enthusiastic amateur mango detective, his next-door neighbor who just didn't want to hear one more word about mangoes, and my next-door neighbor who's a policewoman and an expert in theft cases, and the host who had no idea what was going on. In short, a guy spent over a month trying to catch me who accidentally took someone else's mangoes. Oh no. Well, at a certain point, the window of opportunity to come clean just kind of passed you by, didn't it? And it sounds like you did at least try to silently recompensate them after a fact. A shame that supply chains just weren't working out for you. I don't know what sort of economic status you guys in your apartment had. Maybe not so bad if you live in a building with CCTV and have a PlayStation, so you might not have ruined this person's life. To be honest, you might have actually given some of the others something to do. If you're being treated like prisoners in your own building, then having something like the mango thief happen would likely be a godsend just for something to occupy Mr. Detective's time. That guy must have wasted hours looking into this stuff, while likely enjoying the endeavor, and it seems like you at least gave him a purpose for a whole month of the very tough first few months of the pandemic. Maybe you should commit another crime sometime soon if his trail runs cold. Engage in an ongoing game of cat and mouse. Maybe you could claim to be the victim of a self-imposed crime to throw him off the scent again. You could give this man's life a purpose. I say all this as if it wasn't years ago during the pandemic. Either you got caught by now, or you've all gone back to your normal lives. You definitely weren't purposefully a jerk. This all seems like an accident gone too far. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Karen harasses me in my own darn house and makes a fool out of herself. I live in a ground floor apartment in the middle of my little town with a small courtyard at the back. There's a lovely set of glass sliding doors that open from the living room into said courtyard. And on the other side of the courtyard fence is a public footpath with a public car park behind it. It's lunchtime at the moment, so there's a person walking past every 5 minutes or so. It's also useful to know, for context, that I'm physically disabled and use a walking stick. My genetic disorder, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, also makes me look significantly younger than I am, so despite being 31 years old, I'm often mistaken for a teenager, especially by Karens for whom I seem to be a gosh darn magnet. Anyway, on to the story. So I was sitting on my sofa watching TV and eating my lunch when I spotted one of those little black millipedes on the carpet. We get a lot of them at this time of year. So I used an empty muesli bar box to scoop it up and chuck it over the fence. so that it hopefully won't come back into the apartment. No big deal, right? There was this Karen walking along the footpath a fair way down from our fence, and she yelled something like, "I saw what you just did." I didn't think she was barking at me, since I hadn't done anything wrong or unusual. So I went back inside, and then she appeared at our back gate, shouting at me for throwing rubbish over the fence and littering. I told her that I'd thrown a millipede over the fence that I'd found on the carpet. She accused me of lying and said she had seen me throw a box. I opened the fly screen and held up the empty muesli bar box and said, "You mean this one?" She froze and stammered a bit before saying, "Well, obviously you threw something else then." Like I was being the idiot here. I then said, "Then where is it?" And this awful woman actually started scouring the flower bed between the footpath and the car park for the imaginary rubbish she was adamant that I'd thrown. I guess she found nothing that she could reasonably accuse me of having thrown out there, because she came back to the fence and barked, "If I ever catch you littering again, missy, you'll be dealing with the police." So I said, "Sure, I'd love to tell them about you harassing a disabled woman in her own home. We'll see how that goes for you." And she stormed off. What the actual frick? I get dealing with Karens in the wild, but in my own gosh darn home? I wish I'd thought to snap a photo of her just in case. Hindsight is 20/20, I guess. Sounds like you need to get a terrarium of different bugs to throw at this woman if she returns. But I doubt she will. She probably went out with whoever qualifies as a friend to this sort of person and soaked in the social credit of her story of being violently attacked by a millipede-wielding millennial. This kind of person isn't usually very socially brave, they just love attention. Also, the fact that she demonstrably found nothing and still seemed to think that she had something to call the police over is particularly telling of someone's incapacity to just admit for even a second that they might have done something wrong. This wasn't about littering, this was about needing some kind of acknowledgement from literally anyone for a few minutes of the day. So weird and sad. The author does mention that they seem to be a magnet for Karens, and given the symptoms of your particular case, I can just now begin to imagine that, yeah, you must have some interesting encounters. Looking young and being physically disabled to a degree, and being a woman on top of either one of those two things, you'd probably only have to add being a minority or something to virtually guarantee a run-in with a Karen every time you left the house. My sincerest condolences. Tear open our driveway to pour concrete? Fine. You'll probably enjoy having to dig the concrete out of the ground twice. Not about me, but a guy I used to work with. He was a mountain of a guy, a huge Turk, but the kindest guy I've ever met. He'd do anything for the people he liked. Nobody ever saw anyone get on his bad side until that fateful day. As it happens, he was also our delivery driver, and he spent most days on the road in his semi, leaving before dawn and returning quite late, if at all, that day. Our warehouse had a driveway large enough for him to pull the semi into and load and unload. The supermarket next door decided to do some renovations and expand. When they started construction, they started tearing out their brick parking lot and getting close to tearing out our driveway. The boss runs out and tells them where our property line is and is assured that they won't cross onto our property. Everyone goes back inside and no one worries, until there's suddenly a raging bear Turk standing in the break room shouting about how the driveway has been torn up and he can't get his lorry in. We go out and indeed, the driveway is half missing and there's a concrete building foundation poured in. Construction workers are nowhere in sight. The boss sends the supermarket manager an email address and everyone goes home for the day. Next day, we arrive to the site of very angry construction workers. Apparently, the delivery driver went back in the middle of the night with some bolt cutters, liberated about 30 of their shopping carts, and stuck them into the drying concrete in various comical positions. Overnight, the concrete hardened and the carts became quite difficult to remove. Construction crew brings in the jackhammers, and 4 days later, most of the concrete is gone, and they start preparing another pour, this time leaving our driveway intact. The foundation comes out fine and everything is looking good. At that time, my boss shows up with the announcement that it had a survey done, and while they didn't tear open our driveway the second time, they were still closer to our property line than allowed, and had already filed a complaint to get the concrete removed. Took them another week of jackhammering to get it out. In short, construction crew tore open our driveway and poured concrete onto our property. gave them a physical reason to dig it out one time and a legal reason to dig it out a second time. I don't know how annoyed the construction workers would be, to be honest, unless they somehow aren't all on union contracts. This just sounds like they got several days more paid work than they initially would have bargained for. I guess they'd be annoyed at having their scheduled other projects pushed back, but no contractor I've ever met has been this scrupulous about their schedule. Granted, the supermarket would theoretically be annoyed at having to pay multiple times the initial cost of the construction costs, plus whatever they incur for theoretically encroaching on your property. But why so speculative? Why is the narrator using the words theoretically twice in one sentence? I can tell you that something about this irked me. Because however humorous a story like this might be, the narrator did some consulting and checking around and would suspect that it's 100% made up. Concrete is apparently normally able to be walked on within a few hours of pouring, and it's highly unlikely that Mr. Bear Driver was able to pull this stunt in the middle of the night unless the workers were using special mixers in the concrete to slow the drying process. And apparently that's only normal with special projects, because for regular projects like this, you want your concrete to dry as quickly as possible. Equally unlikely would be demolishing the old parking lot and then pouring the concrete in the space of a single day. So the author is probably the jerk here, not for the actions his workplace took against the supermarket, but for making me have to go and confirm all that and conclude that it's a complete fairy tale. How many in your party? I recently went to a theme park that allows guests to buy access to shorter lines. So many people do this that the regular lines move incredibly slowly because they keep letting people in from the paid line. After an hour in a line that moved only a few steps every 5 minutes or so, it was hard to be patient watching the employees let literally 10 times as many people go from the short line. When asked, the employee said they don't count people, only parties, and that they've trained to let in one party from the regular line for every 4 parties from the fast line. This is what we were told, but it was obvious from an hour of watching that this was not what was taking place. Counting 60 people being let in from the paid line at once, it was easy to see they were letting in more than 4 parties at a time. Well, why can't I just say my party is 100 people then? So we start making friends with people in the line behind us and grew our party to about 20 people. I wanted to say 100, but I didn't think they'd actually go for it. When the guy asked how many in our party, he was a little confused and I'm not sure he believed us, but he did let us all in together. It was only a minor victory, but we saved a few people an extra 15 minutes in line and it felt good sticking it to the mouse. Well, that last statement might have revealed which theme park you were in, but I doubt they're going to come after you for your story, nor hopefully after the channel. We'll see. I don't think you're a jerk in the situation. Even if the paid experience should maybe be a bit faster, having paid for entry to Blisney World in the first place should have probably meant that you don't have to watch the premium economy people's line moving at a race while you stay standing still. I'd say your solution was fair, and who knows, maybe you inspired others in the people's queue to also unite, unionize, and join together in their vision for slightly shorter queue times.
Karen calls the police on me, but it backfires. She accidentally incriminates herself as a thief. Backstory: I'm a single parent. I have a beautiful girl that's turning 5 in August. The past year I've been fighting with an ex that tried to keep my kid away from me. Lawyers aren't cheap, and being single doesn't exactly help with my finances. A couple of months ago, I won the lawsuit and I finally got to have my kid at my home again. For the past few weeks, she was saying she wanted a bicycle. But still recovering from the lawsuit bills, I wasn't able to afford it. Last week, I got a summer bonus which finally gave me the financial boost I needed. So yesterday, I was finally able to buy my little girl her bike she wanted so badly. I enjoyed my time with her, riding our bikes, but then it was getting time for dinner, which I still had to make. So we headed back and parked the bikes in the backyard. We go inside and I start making dinner. After about 10 minutes, I spot movement in the corner of my eye through the kitchen window. That's on the side of the house. I see this kid, I'm guessing 6 or 7 years old, just casually strolling by with a brand new bike I just got today. My heart dropped and I ran to the front door hoping I'd catch him before he rides away. I was lucky I did. I yanked the bike out of his hands and freaked out to him, saying it was mine and he had no right to just walk onto other people's backyard to take things. I was angry. I forced him to get off my property and set the bike in my front hallway, thinking it was over. Boy, was I wrong.
After comforting my little girl who'd never seen me this mad before, poor thing, I returned to the kitchen to continue making dinner. 15 minutes later, the doorbell rings. It's the kid and his evil mother. I'm greeted with a verbal barrage.
You give this boy his bike back. He found it. It's his.
So I say, he found it in my backyard. I got it for my kid today. You should try teaching your darn kid some manners. He shouldn't trespass on other people's property to take their things.
Don't tell me how to raise my kid. Give me the bike back or I'm calling the police.
Call the damn police. And I slammed the door in her face. By this point, my 4-year-old is crying her eyes out and I get to comfort her again, as she's thinking she's losing her brand new bike. Her sobbing finally over, I try to continue making dinner yet again. Preparations done, I'm about to put this all on the stove. Doorbell. I flip out, storm to the door, violently open it, getting ready to just explode in this woman's face. Guess what? She actually called the cops. I instantly calm down when I see it's the police and invite one of the 2 officers inside while the other one stays with the evil woman. I explain the situation and show him the box the bike came in, along with the receipt that has my name on it. He shrugs and apologizes for the inconvenience and assured me that I won't be bothered again. I let him out and close the door with a smug smile on my face. I check the front window to see what's happening, and I see her go into a full tantrum. It ends with her in handcuffs and on the back seat of the patrol car. Bye, Felicia. Don't know what happened to her, and I don't care. I finally finished dinner, and my kid still has her bike. That's all that matters to me. Boy, what a day. Just to answer some of the questions that are coming up, I am the father, as in male. We had potatoes with peas and carrots with sausage for dinner. Yes, I'm a male that knows how to cook. The bike will never be left unattended outside again. And yes, I have a sturdy lock. I located and took a picture of the serial number on my bike in case this woman tries anything else. Excellent care and disposal there, sir. I don't think there's any debate as to who was in the wrong here. She called the cops for you taking something that her son outright stole from your property? I have no idea what she expected from this, or how it could go in her favor. I am a little surprised that it seems like she got arrested for behaving like a jerk, but then again, it does sound like she was kind of delusional, so maybe she flew off the handlebars and wouldn't stop haranguing the officers for not enforcing her will in the kingdom of Karen. I do kind of wonder what maximum legal punishments you can get for just being sort of annoying and overbearing like she was. Maybe if she misbehaves enough, Dad might get custody? Let's hope that he's a better person and parent. It sounds like the kid's essential guidelines for life are, do whatever you want, Mummy will go and scream at whoever says otherwise. I would be worried that someone this crazy would come back and try to steal the bike again. Hopefully your daughter was made wary enough about the experience that she learns the lesson that so many people in Europe never seem to learn. Lock up your bikes, or even better, take them inside. Because neighborhood Karen probably doesn't have anything better to fill her time or the sense to contemplate that stealing it again might be a bad idea.
Your birthday cake is mine now.
When I was a little ankle biter, under kindergarten age, so 4 or younger, I don't remember for sure, I went to daycare while my mum worked. I was a babysitter's dream child because I was timid and never disobeyed or acted out. I was too worried about not being liked. My biggest problem was that other kids would sometimes single me out to pick on because they knew I wouldn't retaliate. Unfortunately, my mum picked an extremely entitled housebeast of a woman to watch me. It wasn't her fault. On the surface, Dolly seemed perfect, and the kids all seemed to love her. Her program was pretty good, clean facilities, the works. She really seemed legit. Apparently, there was just something about me that really bothered her. She'd do low-key petty things to make me cry or hurt my feelings, but since I was a timid child, it never occurred to me to tell on her. When she was mean to me, it was tantamount to being in trouble for me. I didn't want my mum to know that I got in trouble, so I never said anything. I managed to tolerate it until my birthday came around. Birthdays were a big deal in my house, and my cake that year was awesome. A local artist made an amazing Sesame Street cake in the shape of Big Bird. It was beautiful and delicious. Our family had a little the night before, and the next day my mum wrapped the cake up and brought it with me to share with everyone at daycare. She spoke to Dolly and made sure that was okay. There was lunch and snack time every day, and Dolly assured my mum it was fine. I want to reiterate that this cake had barely been touched. Maybe 3 pieces had been eaten, and there was plenty left. All day long, I was so excited. I was thinking about this delicious cake and how excited my friends were going to be when this beautiful cake was brought out and cut up. I was even thinking and hoping at the back of my mind that they might even sing happy birthday to me. I had this cake built up in my mind to be a birthday party. Even to adult me, cake is always a party, but I digress. You know how it is when you're a kid and excited for something, that thing becomes your whole world. Visions of chocolate Big Bird danced in my head, through reading cycle, through sing and play, through all of our morning activities. By the time lunchtime comes, that cake is looming so large in my head that thoughts of anything else are crowded out. The level of excitement is the kind of thing that adults never experience. You forget how to be that excited when you start adulting. The cake was alpha and omega, the beginning and the end. There was a stairway to heaven somewhere, and that cake was at the top of it. That's how excited I was. So finally, the time comes. The cake is brought out and the kids all ooh and ah. Big Bird is murdered, cut up, and slices are duly handed around. The kid next to me gets a piece. The kid on my other side gets a piece. Everyone gets a piece of chocolate Big Bird. Except me. I'm starting to low-key panic, but I feel certain that either a mistake was made or maybe Dolly was going to serve me last, maybe after they sang Happy Birthday. Nope. When Dolly takes the cake back into the kitchen area, I muster up every bit of courage I have and I approach her. "Excuse me, Miss Dolly." I had a bit of a lisp back then. She says, "Yes, what is it?" "I'm sorry, but I didn't get any cake." "And?" "Did you forget me?" "No, I did not. Your mother said this cake was for the class. She did not say it was for you." It was for my birthday. We brought it to share, but I was supposed to have a piece." "You already had some at home. You don't need any more." She starts wrapping the cake, of which there is plenty left, in tinfoil. "My family will really enjoy this after dinner. Be sure to thank your mother." By this time, disappointed tears are rolling down my face, and the sight of her wrapping up that beautiful cake, knowing she was going to keep it all for herself, was just too much for me. I began to sob broken-heartedly. She didn't care. She for some reason got off on seeing me cry, which makes no sense because I was quiet and obedient. To this day, it's still a mystery to me. As punishment, for crying I guess, I had to stand in the kitchen doorway by myself for the rest of snack time and watch as she and my friends ate my birthday cake. She made a big show of visually enjoying that cake too. This time I knew that I hadn't done anything wrong, so I did tell my mum. It didn't happen until later that night though. It took me a while to get up the courage because I was going up against a grown-up. My mum was mad, and she went to talk to Dolly the first thing the next morning. Of course, Dolly lied about it, but my mother, who knew my nature, took me at my word and I never had to spend time in that woman's care again. I had a babysitter for a while, and eventually she found another place for me to go until I was old enough for school. That didn't bring back Big Bird, though. Rest in peace, you delicious bird. This was over 40 years ago, and to this day it still strikes me as one of the meanest things an adult can do to a kid. Being left out is bad, and being left out of your own birthday is heartbreaking. Wow, I feel like I've stumbled into a children's fairy tale or something. Was this grim, selfish nanny type who delighted in upsetting a child just doing it because they didn't happen to like them? Believe me, I've worked with kids, and I get just not liking some of them very much for no particular reason. But you gotta treat them all the same regardless, cause otherwise you're being terrible and your consciousness should be attacking you for your unfair treatment. This sounds like some Dickensian nanny type, although some of that hangs on whether her name was actually Dolly. That sounds real old school. Hopefully the silver lining of this was that it maybe opened you up to the idea that it was okay to tell your mum when people like this were awful to you. I know that it's way too late to give advice, but as another shy kid with social issues, I can tell you that early childhood can be rough for those types. Normally, you just have to worry about it from the other children, though. I can't think about having to deal with it from adults, too. Dolly, whatever nursing home you're in now, you're a jerk. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Oh, I work here, just not for you. I'm a white-collar office minion, a researcher. I work in an office behind a desk. Now, big company occupies most of the floor space, but I work for little company next door, and we have a couple of other neighbors. It's pretty late in the day, close to 7 in the evening. I've left for the day, but I forgot something at my desk, so I double back. The place is mostly deserted. There is only one other person on the elevator, an older guy in proper office attire, lanyard, buttoned shirt and tie. He gets off at the same floor and walks in front of me. When he reaches the locked security door, he twists around to stare at me. I look back, and he looks at me. I assume he's some kind of senior manager at big company. Maybe he's forgotten his door code. No big deal, it happens. So I stand there waiting patiently. The guy doesn't say anything though, he just stares at me. Stares. After a while, I awkwardly say, are you opening the door or shall I? He holds a pass up, punches a code in, the door beeps. He holds the door open, but he's still standing in my way and looking very belligerent about it. At this point, I realize what's going on. Okay, fair enough. He's being security conscious. I'm some random person with messy hair, a polo shirt and jeans. It's Friday. Mind you, both big company and my own employer have casual Friday, so he's the odd one out, not me. I say, I work here? The guy glares at me. I don't recognize you. Okay, I reply. Sure, but I do work here. I mean, I don't recognize him either, but there's dozens of people on this floor, split across big company and the rest of us smaller outfits. I don't recognize you, he insists, like it's some great sin. I hold up my own security pass and point in the direction of the doors for little company, indicating I'm not big company. My office is over there. The man huffs. Well, how am I supposed to know that? I give up and squeeze past him. Well, he could have asked, or he could have at least considered the fact that there's more than one organization on this floor. I mean, let's be honest, the antagonist of this story wasn't the worst person in the world. It just kind of feels like this could have been very easily solved. Oh, you don't recognize me? Fine, close the door and I'll open it with my security card because I have one, because I work here. Kinda just seems like everyone stood here and dithered when there were some very easy fixes close at hand. I don't think it would be at all awkward for him to just ask to close the door for the test I'd just mentioned either, to see if you were telling the truth. Anything is better than both of you just standing there. This is certainly one of the more mundane Am I the Jerk confrontations we've had for a while, so it's notable for that fact. This is more Am I socially awkward than Am I the Jerk. Maybe next time spice it up a bit by going on the offensive like some of our Karens, and screaming at the man that he was actually the intruder himself. Better yet, rip off your shirt and try to initiate a boxing match. I'd remember that story. Entitled Mother wants me to do her work because I do it for an elderly lady. As some background, me and my significant other live in a 7-apartment block. We lived here since 2011 and saw a bunch of neighbors come and go. We both work on 4 shifts in different companies, which means we work on Saturdays and Sundays, but we have all of our free time together. The block is in the old town of our home city, which means tight roads and sometimes bad smells. In my home country, there's a law that every house owner has to shovel snow in front of their house or apartment on the sidewalk, because if someone slips on your sidewalk, this can be serious trouble for you. Our landlord made an agreement with us. We're 7 apartments, and in the winter months when it's freezing, on each day of the week, one of the residents has to shovel snow from the sidewalk. Since we moved in, it worked out mostly. One of our residents is a nice elderly lady, who is really sweet but also quite sick and frail. Because of her condition, she couldn't keep up over the years with the agreement, so being a nice guy, I offered to take her part as well. She offered me money for compensation, which I refused. I don't do it for the money. But sometimes when she's baking something, she always brings us a cake or cookies. Because of the shift I do in the early morning, before morning and late shift or after night shift when I return home, this worked out well the last 5 to 6 years, and there was no problem. Until last year. Enter entitled mother, her husband, and her 2 kids. They moved into the apartment next to us last year in August. Well, what to say, the kids can be loud sometimes, which is okay, because kids. Entitled mother and her husband, on the other hand, well, I met the husband only 2 to 3 times since they moved in, and he was drunk all the times and wore joggings. I met the entitled mother a few times and she always looked down on me, like I was something lower than her. From what I know, neither of them work because they're either at home or at some pub or cafe while their kids are at school. So I'm done with the background now, on to the story. This happened last year in the middle of December. Pretty late, I know, but the entitled mother must have watched me for some time and this is important later. I just came home from my last night shift around 7 a.m. on Sunday morning. This is important because in the last night shift, we have to clean our machines and it's pretty rough if you're alone. We're a 2-people team usually. I was alone the whole shift and I had to do the cleaning alone. My significant other texted me that she was doing overtime, so I had the bed for me alone. I only wanted to sleep and headed right for my apartment. I went inside, undressed, showered, and went straight to bed. About an hour later, just as I was in a good sleep, I hear my doorbell ring. Still sleepy, I slip into some pants and open the door. Entitled mother stands in front of me, tapping with her foot, arms crossed, and a sour look on her face. Good morning, can I help you? I say. I hate being woken up, but I still try to be polite. This woman, in a demanding voice, why haven't you shoveled snow on the sidewalk? It took me a second for me to know what she meant. To prevent this kind of arguing, the landlord sets up the days for each resident on which day they had to do it. He'd circle around every year so residents wouldn't do the same days over and over. Because I did it for the nice elderly lady, I'd been assigned to Tuesday and Friday. The list gets put out on the blackboard in the block entrance. Also, to point out Sunday was the entitled Mother's Day. So I clarify, I have Tuesday this year, not Sunday. So what? I saw you do it on Friday instead of the old lady. That's because she's old, sick, and can't do it anymore on her own. So what? One day more won't hurt you. Look, I had a hard night shift, and I just want to sleep. If you won't do it, ask your husband. No. You will do it because we want to head out with the kids, and we have no time for that, so you will do it. At that point, I had enough, but I had an ace up my sleeve. All right, have fun. God, you should have seen the smug smile on her face when she left and thought that I'd comply. Yeah, right. I waited a few minutes before she, her husband, and the kids left the building. I closed the door and went back to sleep. About 5 hours later, after my significant other came home and went to bed, I was already awake, my doorbell rang again. Lo and behold, our landlord was outside my door. He checks every day if we shovel the snow on the sidewalk. If someone slipped, the state would sue the landlord because he's the owner of the block, and he'd probably kick them out after that. Good morning. Did I wake you? The landlord knows me and my significant other very well and that we work 4 shifts. No, don't worry, I've already been awake. Good. Say, you don't happen to know where the entitled mother and her family are? No idea. Haven't seen them in a while. Well, it's their turn to shovel the snow. Have they not done it? No, they haven't. Well, I got home from night shift and I was sleeping. The landlord looked at me with one eyebrow raised. Well, he isn't stupid. I'll take care of it. Don't worry. He smiled, we shook hands and parted ways. 2 weeks later, I had the same night shift again. As I came home, I saw entitled mother shoveling snow. I walked by, smirked and pointed at the sidewalk. You missed a spot there. And I walked inside. I could hear her ranting and dropping the shovel. Never felt so satisfied. Yeah, that's a good well-deserved dose of karma for Euro Karen right there. Although I do have to wonder if her situation wasn't a little rough at home, if her unemployed drunk husband wasn't doing it when her hand was finally forced, and she'd rather demand that her neighbor do it for her. But that's highly speculative of me. Look, you can ask for that sort of thing, although there's a lot of nerve in that action, but the nice old lady shows us that it's kind of something that most of us would consider a huge favor, and she does what she can to repay it to the author and his partner. You don't just get to demand someone do your share of the labor for you. Also, author, you're a bit of a jerk for delighting in this woman's misery, but at this point none of us would fault you. Fair enough, I say. Guy from church becomes obsessed with me, gives me a ride to learn where I live, and then shows up at 4 a.m. This is another story about how my usually spot-on instincts concerning people failed me spectacularly. It starts with an innocent night on the town with my coworker and friend, Georgia. I always just call her G. She's a teensy, pocket-sized elf of a girl who bears a close resemblance to a young Claire Danes, so not altogether unfortunate-looking. This was during a period when boyfriend and I were separated. She was single too, so we went out to the local watering holes together quite often. It was that period of our lives when a night on the town meant dressing to the nines and then drinking, dancing, and flirting all night long. Now, as for myself, I very rarely drink. I get inebriated even less often. My limit is usually 1 mixed drink or 2 beers. I just don't like to put myself into a state where I'm not in control, especially in a bar kind of setting where you really need to be on your guard. For this reason, I usually drove whenever we went to the local watering holes. But that night, there was something wrong with my car. If I remember correctly, there was an exhaust leak. It wasn't something that would keep the car from running, but could possibly cause us to be pulled over. Not a scenario that someone who has a drunk passenger and potentially a drink or two in their system wants to invite. Since we didn't want to run the risk of having any run-ins with the law, we decided that G would drive. To make a long story short, G got spectacularly drunk and decided to leave with an ex that she happened to run into during the night. "Don't worry though," she says. "James said he would take you home." James was the nice-looking guy that she'd introduced me to during the night. She told me that they went to the same church and she'd known him since she was a kid, and he was a really nice guy. James and I had been talking and dancing, and yes, even flirting a little as the night progressed. Because I felt like we'd gotten to know each other a bit, and because he came with G's stamp of approval, not something she normally gave to anyone readily, I felt fairly comfortable accepting a ride home from him. Also, I was kind of put on the spot since G had already asked James and told me about it in front of him. I didn't want to insult a guy I potentially wanted to go out with. Looking back, I wish to whatever you worship that I'd just called a cab. On the way to my place, James dropped a lot of hints. "I'm not ready to call it a night. I'd like to hang out a bit more. I could use another beer," among other things he said. I casually told him that I was tired and ready for bed, and thanked him for the ride. He asked for a kiss, and I gave him a playful peck on the cheek, patted him on the arm, and shut the car door. The next day, I went out to run errands, and the phone rings as I'm walking out the door. It's James wanting to hang out. I'm tired, so I say he can come over and we'll watch a movie and hang out for a short while. When I hang up, I see that he's left a couple of messages while I was out. A little pushy, but okay, I guess. Maybe he just really likes me. We're sitting on the couch watching a movie and he goes from friendly companion to full-on make-out mode in 0.2 seconds. I mean, 1 second we're sitting on the couch at a comfortable distance, not holding hands or even touching each other, and the next he's practically on top of me, ramming his tongue down my throat. Oh no, dude. Homegirl don't play like that. So I'm telling him no, and he's acting like he doesn't get it. He's getting slightly more and more aggressively affectionate, and I'm starting to low-key panic. I don't remember what I said exactly, but I did eventually manage to get him out the door, relatively unscathed, I thought, save for a copious amount of unwanted slobber. When I went to change for bed later, I found finger marks on my upper arms from where he'd gripped me so hard. The next night, I get approximately 10 calls from James. I didn't answer, and he left voicemails. Every single time. This was before everyone had electronic leashes, aka cell phones. I myself only had a landline, so it was a lot easier to ghost someone back then. I figured I'd just not answer the phone and he'd eventually give up, like most sensible people, right? Wrong. My phone rings at 4 a.m. Now, we know nothing good happens at that hour of the night. People don't call you up to chat, so when I was jolted out of sleep, I answered the phone automatically, without even pausing to think or look at caller ID. Oh boy, it's James. I hear, "What are you doing?" "Are you kidding me? I'm sleeping." "No, you're not." "Yes, I am. That's what most people do at 4 a.m. on a work night." "Why is your living room light on then?" You know that old saying, "my blood ran cold"? Well, I always thought it was a dramatic phrase to describe sudden fear. But you don't fully understand it until you experience it the way I did. He was calling me from right outside my door. I was single, lived alone, and had no weapon. I was in the habit of leaving certain lights on at all times, because quite honestly, I'm afraid of the dark. I feel safer with lights on and even sleep with a bedside lamp on. I always have since I was a child. I don't remember what I said back, except that it involved a lot of swearing and it ended with him pounding on my door and calling me repeatedly for about a half hour or so. I eventually had to call the police to get rid of him. If I was wiser back then, I'd have gotten a protective order, but I wasn't. The next day, I sarcastically thanked G for the setup, and she was furious when she saw the bruises on my arms. She ended up admitting that she didn't really know James all that well, but they'd been acquainted for a long time and he seemed like a nice guy. He kept up the psycho-dialing for a while, but eventually quit when G confronted him about my bruises and threatened to expose him to their church community, and worse, his mother. Thank goodness. I hope that since then James has learned that a ride home doesn't entitle you to a date or anything else from a girl. This was over a decade ago and I live with my boyfriend now. The time for police and other intervention has passed. Yes, I probably should have told the cops, but sadly I didn't. At least I'm safe and I got rid of him. Oh god, what an absolute creep. So let's try and draw a timeline here. This was pre-Me Too, obviously, and apparently cell phones weren't a universal thing, so it could be as early as the 90s. I don't know if that means that this guy was just in a media bubble where pursuing a woman and grand weird gestures was still a thing you could do, and whether it was kind of expected for some guys, but seriously, creepy as heck anyway, church boy. I don't care how keen you are or how romantic you think it is, but when the cops get called on you, maybe that's the point where you stop. Although apparently her unleashing the full fury of her adult vocabulary on him didn't work either, so I guess he was just sort of immune to the word no. Honestly, I think this guy deserved his church and mum being told about this anyway. Because if he wasn't punished for his ongoing behavior, and it's likely that he just found another woman to completely ignore obvious signs from. He needs the people around him to monitor his behavior and get him some sort of professional help. We tend to come down harder on guys like James these days, but they often end up just surrounding themselves with other like-minded people on the internet and becoming incels or something. So they still have trouble contemplating that they might be the problem here. It goes on and on. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Today I messed up by slapping the beef in front of my 6-year-old. Okay, so hear me out. This happened last night. Hear me out. Let me set the scene. Yesterday, my wife, 36, and my daughter, 13, tested positive for COVID and were banished to one or both of their bedrooms. My eldest son, 18, never leaves his room because video games are his life, but has also been feeling pretty crappy despite a negative test result, though he's already had COVID once. This leaves my youngest son, age 6, and me, 35, being the only ones in the house to feel fine, and have never contracted the virus and thusly have free reign of the rest of the house. As any decent father and husband would do, I sent them all a group text explaining that if this was the zombie virus, they'd all be dead, and 6-year-old and I would be the family's sole survivors and have to find a way to carry on without them, and asked when dinner would be done, so I began preparing the meal. The scene is set. I love corned beef, not just for St. Patrick's Day, but all year. My wife does not love corned beef. She doesn't like it or even tolerate it, mostly. 2 nights ago, I'd spent several hours preparing a corned beef because we'd planned to make corned beef hash for dinner last night. My wife will only eat corned beef if it's my homemade corned beef hash. Regardless of everyone's sick status, I continued to prepare corned beef hash for dinner. My 6-year-old is in the kitchen with me as I gather the onion, garlic, butter, potatoes, and the other bits. He's quite helpful and especially loves helping in the kitchen. As we finish up our dicing and prep work, I go to the fridge and grab the corned beef that was prepared the night before. Boiled twice, slow roasted at low temperature, tender, delicious, wrapped in foil. I place it on the counter and ask 6-year-old if he was excited for dinner. He asks, "What are we having again?" forgetting what it's called, to which I reply excitedly, "Corned beef hash," and smacked the wrapped meat with my hand. I didn't smack this chunk of protein with my dominant hand, but as luck would have it, I did smack it with the hand that has my Fitbit secured around the waist. At the exact moment that I physically subdue the roast, my Fitbit begins vibrating violently, to alert me that I've reached my step goal for the day. I remark, "Cool, apparently that got me the final steps for the day." The 6-year-old asks, "What did? Slapping the beef?" I suppress a chuckle and reply with a simple, "Yeah," thinking that would be the end of it. Nope, boy was I wrong. 6-year-old proceeds to tell me that I need to slap the beef every day to make sure I meet my step goal. Then he tells me that he wants a Fitbit so he can slap the beef and meet his step goals. After this, he runs at a full sprint down the back hall towards, but not into, my room, currently housing my wife and daughter. And he tells the two of them that Daddy got his step count by slapping the beef, and he's going to get a Fitbit so he can slap the beef, and together both of us are going to slap the beef every day to make sure that we get our steps in and meet our goals. I head down the hall towards him, and I hear my wife and daughter laughing hysterically. I kneel down, look him in the eye, and tell him in as normal tone as I can manage, "That's a secret men have to keep from women for thousands of years. You're not supposed to tell them that. It's for men only." And I wink. His little face lights up. He loves secrets. Who doesn't? He proceeds to tell his mum and sister to forget what they've heard. He tells them that they know nothing. Lastly, he informs them that we'll slap the beef when they aren't around. I then took off my Fitbit and made a delicious meal. I've got 100 great stories like this about him. My speech at his wedding will be epic. In short, smacked a piece of meat in front of my son, which unintentionally earned my step goal on my Fitbit. Son proceeded to tell his mum and sister that he and I were going to slap the beef every day to make sure we reach our Fitbit goals. You sick, twisted man. Also, very well played. I was this kid growing up right up until the age of 15. An inability to spot a euphemism, even as it thrusts its warm, juicy beef straight under my nose, is a curse that brings us endless humiliation. But I can also say that it brought those around me endless joy, to the points where now, in my adult life, if I see a dangling opportunity to say something borderline inappropriate instead of a direct and innuendo-free line, I will as often as not grab it and take the subsequent pounding from my peers, just for the fun of it. Embrace your role as the expeller of the unfortunate phrasing, son of the author, and you will be the belle of the ball in life. I've even heard it can be a great way to avoid getting beaten up in prison. But seriously, this poor kid is going to realize what you've done to him one day and hold you directly responsible. I just hope that he didn't tell all his friends and teachers in school about this. Perhaps the author didn't think that part through. Because honestly, 6-year-olds just love to ramble on about whatever notable stuff happened to them lately, and I think there's a greater than 50% chance of a teacher hearing this kid telling his peers about him and Daddy slap the beef together. You know I'm your boss, right? Entitled kid and entitled mother try to get me fired for not rewarding the entitled kid's rudeness. This is a long one, so I apologize. To preface it all, I used to work in an after-school care. So once the kids in my primary school, which is elementary school for you Yanks, had finished school for the day at around 3-ish, about 60 or 70 kids would then come over to our building on campus and chill out until their parents came to pick them up around 5:45 p.m. We'd give them afternoon tea and then watch over them as they pretty much just play games and do arts and crafts and such. A lot of the kids that we looked after were full-time kids, meaning that we had them 5 days a week. And most of, if not all of the holidays from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., meaning that all in all I'm spending a lot of time with other people's kids as a sort of pseudo-guardian and parent role model. So using manners and general good behavior is extremely important to me as it helps to inform the rest of their lives. During my time there, I had an interesting run-in with an entitled parent and their equally, if not more entitled son. Bear in mind that this all happened 4 years ago, so the details might be a bit hazy. But such an obvious lack of respect from both parents and children made this encounter stay in my mind. I was playing with a soccer ball in school hall with a few other kids. The entitled kid comes up to me and grabs my shirt. "Give me your ball." "Oh, sorry man, we're playing with it now." I pointed at the other kids. "But you can jump in the game if you want." "I said give me the ball." "Sorry kid, not with an attitude like that. But if you want to join in a game with us, by all means." "You know I'm your boss, right?" "Excuse me? Give me the ball now or I'll have you fired." I was flabbergasted at such a blatantly rude attempt to intimidate me. Once again, no deal, but thanks for playing. The kid storms off and I think nothing of it until later, closer to home time. Entitled mum joins the battle and confronts me. "Why did you steal the ball off my son? What the hell were you thinking?" "Oh, is that what he told you?" "No, I was already playing a game with a group of kids when he demanded I give him the ball we were playing with. Now, had he asked nicely and used his manners, I would have considered it and I would have started a different game. However, I don't reward disrespect and rudeness here. He doesn't have to use his manners. You're getting paid to do whatever you have to keep him happy. You've ruined his day and mine. I hope you're happy. I'm going to have a word with your supervisor. You're not fit to look after children. At this point, I'm pretty incensed about being told I'm not fit to look after children, so I go off on this lady. Me? Listen, lady, I don't reward bad behavior. If you don't like how I do things here, then by all means, there's a fine after-school establishment up the road that will be more than happy to accommodate you and your family. Bear in mind, no one would put up with such rude behavior from that kid. How dare you? We've been here for years. You can't talk to me like that. She storms off and starts talking to my head supervisor. My head supervisor is a very kind but firm lady, and she doesn't have a bar of it, as this isn't the first time entitled kid had been acting up. Head supervisor calmly explains to the entitled parent that she supports my decision and that if indeed they do have a problem, then they should try the other after-school care program up the road. We had a waiting list of about 30 kids, so replacing them wouldn't be an issue. The entitled parent, after finding out that there was a higher chance of being kicked out of the program rather than me being fired, stormed out of the office with entitled kid in tow. This wasn't my first battle with crappy parents, and it certainly wasn't my last. I'm glad I didn't get fired as well. I feel for the kid because he's getting a crap deal with parents that enable his behavior. That being said, someone has to bring him back to the real world. One interaction at a time. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. In short, kid doesn't get what they want, jilted parent tries to get me fired, and gets shut down by head supervisor. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of learned behavior on display here. If this kid doesn't learn that he can't just behave like his Karen mum in any given situation soon, he's going to have a tough time socially and a tougher time in the rest of his life. This is on his parents. I'll say that it's the first story of this sort that I've seen where the parent seems to actually believe that the kid in question should dictate his whim to educators, though. Normally the parents in question are just content with trying to shield their kids from bad grades and detention, not try to get people fired for not expressly following the divine will of their younger tyrants. Absolutely delusional, and they backed off when they realized that the after-school program rightfully wasn't taking any crap from them. Awesome. Am I the jerk for leaving in the middle of a celebration because of the toast my husband gave? I, a 25-year-old woman, married my husband, 31, 3 years ago. I'm currently pregnant with our first baby together. We found out it's a girl, and my in-laws wanted to invite us for dinner for gender reveal announcement and celebration. We got there and saw many relatives coming to congratulate us and celebrate it. It was bigger than expected, which made me nervous because I'm not a fan of being around many people. We sat at the dinner table and I barely ate. I was feeling so much anxiety and was sort of upset that my husband didn't warn me about how many people were coming. But I tried to stay calm and collected. Anyways, after the announcement and in the middle of the celebration, my husband wanted to give a toast. He opened a bottle and poured a drink and wished that our daughter be healthy, happy, but look nothing like me. Everyone at the table laughed. I sat there in shock while he kept laughing with them. I felt so much rage and my anxiety got out of hand, not gonna lie. I got up, took my purse and made my way out. His mum followed me asking if I was okay. I told her I just wanted to go home. He came to the door asking what was wrong. That's when we started arguing. He said this was a joke toast and that my reaction was over the top. But the thing is, ever since I got pregnant, he kept hinting that he doesn't want our daughter to look like me. He even once got up in the morning and first thing he told me was how much he wished our daughter looked nothing like me. It hurt me, while I'm already dealing with my low self-esteem and anxiety. I wanted to go home, but he said I was being a baby and that I should learn to take a effing joke. I said he made everyone laugh at me, but he defensively said it didn't warrant me trying to walk out of dinner and be so disrespectful to the relatives who came to celebrate and share our joy. I went home and he called many times telling me to get my insecurities in check before I pass them on to our daughter. He urged me to get therapy and stop acting so dramatically like how I did in front of his family. I think leaving dinner wasn't the best solution, but I just got overwhelmed. Am I the jerk? Ugh, this is just gross. He made a pretty mean joke about you in front of your families, and apparently they all laughed at it? Then he dismissed your feelings out of hand when you just wanted to go home? Honestly, I'm sorry that this guy is the father of your children. Multiple instances of saying he hopes the kid doesn't look like you? What's the subtext? Because it's either that he thinks you're ugly or that you cheated, and neither of those options are endearing, even as a joke. And if your daughter doesn't meet whatever his standard is, it doesn't sound like he's going to be great for her self-esteem either. I hope that you can either magically make him do a 180 on his behavior, or get the kid a better stepdad. My condolences.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.